You may only address the board once under public comment. Opportunity may not yield your time to others, and board members will not debate or answer questions at this time. Public comments. Please step up to the podium. Public comment. Seeing no public comment, we've arrived at the minutes of the Tuesday of the August study session.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. Any questions, corrections, or deletions?
Question.
Commissioner Bear.
Item 8 just says lagoon plan. Nothing relative to who presented it or what the presentation was. I'd like to see more information than just the agenda item listed.
Was there any action done on that?
No, sir.
This presentation? I'm fine with the way I heard it.
Tony, what are you proposing to be on there?
I'm just asking for in future minutes that when we're listing agenda items that some kind of information be put there. But it just says the lagoon plan. Kind of wonder, well, what did we do? Did we discuss it? Did we skip it? There's no report as to anything that went on. So it's just a request for the future. I would prefer to actually see some stuff here.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Tony, 8A says that it was a Cascades Park presentation, and underneath that it says Angie Klein presented and answered questions from commissioners. And without it being an action item, I don't think that's plenty.
Okay. I hear you. I hope you heard me.
Well, that packet's still available to the public. They can go back into our calendar, find it, if they so choose to.
Yeah, we can always tell the public they can go dig it up. Put the burden on them.
Or you can email it to them.
We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? 2023-2024 budget public hearing. Mr. Overton.
Cecilia.
Good morning. I am here to present our proposal for the 2023-2024 budget. So we'll go ahead and go through the presentation. So on page 2, it kind of talks about what as a board you voted on our strategic priorities, and this is pretty much the backbone of our budget. Can you do it for me? Sorry. And then on page 3, so on page 3, this is where we're showing 7 years of actual expenditures and then 3 years of budgeted expenditures. It just kind of shows the history and the trend of the general fund. Any questions on this at all?
We just kind of blur them out. These budgeted amounts, do they include the recent allocations to JC DOT for road work?
So in 2022, the only thing, it only shows the $208,000 right now, is if that's what you're asking for about.
Correct. And
the other $1 million is in 2022, but as I have mentioned before, it's actually right now a transfer out to our equipment fund. And as a board, I will need you to approve a budget amendment so we can actually move that to JCDOT. So it is budgeted just under a different line item in 2022. Does that make sense?
And I'm sorry I'm late, but have we got the revenues yet?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So are there any other questions? We'll just go ahead and move on. We are into revenues. So this is our 2023 revenues, broken down between the different categories, and the percentages are very in line with prior years based on taxes being the vast majority of our budget, the 60%. So questions on revenue?
The assumption with respect to the jail millage is what in the revenues for '23?
So for 2023, there is an extra $1 million that will be available, that is available from the old millage that is being transferred into 2023's budget. So
But-
it has not, we don't have any new jail millage for 2023 into this budget.
So there's no assumption on, I just want to understand what the assumptions are, that's all.
Right. The assumption is that it's going to pass, so if you were to look in the jail millage fund, the money's there, but the money is not transferred into the general fund. I did not use any new jail millage to balance our 2023 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions?
Okay, so going on, so our expenditures, again, the expenditures are very much in line with the percentages in prior years, with our wages and benefits being the majority of our budget. And then, any questions on the expenditures?
Earl?
Thank you. I don't recall seeing it, or if I did, I missed it. The contribution for pension plan is always a kind of a variable number for us based upon, our funding level and all that. What would be the 2023 contribution versus what we are expecting in 2022?
Yeah, so for 2023, I believe that it was down to $600,000. And for 2022 is right around $800,000 or $900,000. I'm trying to remember. I know it went from a 9% down to a 6%. I remember the percentages. So for 2023, it's 6% of wages is for a defined benefit contribution, and for 2022 is 9%.
I guess my concern is with the market doing as it is,
Right.
that's a kind of a trailing number. I suppose that maybe the year after is when we might expect that to come up.
Yeah, it'll be in 2024 that will affect what's going on this year. We're like 2 years behind.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on. So, this is our general fund expenditure trends, and this is based on the different categories that you see in the prior slides. It's, so you're looking at 2 years of actual and 3 years of budget. Any questions on this line? So I'll just go ahead and move on then. So in the 2023, the expenditures by the different groups. So public safety, judicial, general government, and then, and again, these by groups is also very similar to prior years, percentages also up to. There isn't any big swing in any of the groups either. Then on the next few pages.
I got a question for you.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, so under which category of expenditures when we make settlements on civil litigation, does that go under judicial?
Civil litigation?
Yeah. Lawsuit settlement.
Lawsuit settlements, those are more, are we talking about for the MMRA?
I'm assuming that's an expenditure. I don't know.
So what
I'm
we do
asking.
is those for MMRA, we actually pay premiums to them. And so we actually have a separate fund set up with MMRA that money goes into that helps pay for those lawsuits.
Okay.
So if we have money sitting in a fund at MRA, it's considered an asset on our balance sheet.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where we just pretty much pay them premiums. And so if that asset is lower at the end of the year, then it creates more of an expenditure.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the explanation.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
No problem.
Our stop loss is $100,000.
All right, so,
One more
no
question on
problem,
that.
that's fine.
So the expense for paying that insurance premium,
Mhm.
So we could have a number.
Is that-
It's in non-departmental, so it's gonna be in your other, in your other category. That's where our non-departmental goes.
thank you.
Yep.
Could you just, in few words, just briefly explain the legislative expenditures?
The legislative
You're watching
expenditure. So if we go back, it'd be easier if we kind of go back to, if you look on page 10, that's the judicial. Is that what you're talking about, I think? Or legislative is you guys.
That's us.
Legislative is us.
That's you.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, that's you. It's your board of commissioners, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's not like it's lobbying, it's
No,
our salaries and our
It's
stuff.
just, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, each commissioner is given as also an expenditure item that they're allowed to manage throughout their year for travel and that type of stuff.
Oh, okay.
And it's less than
In the
1%.
past, when commissioners have exceeded that amount that they're allowed to manage,
Mm-hmm.
they have to come directly to the Board of Commissioners and ask for an additional,
Yeah,
deposit in their account,
okay.
if you would. Then that money is transferred at the end of the year back into the reserve, correct? And have we ever exceeded our legislative number as a total board?
No, I don't believe so.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, so, again, so the next couple of pages, it breaks down the different departments that make up the different categories. So, public safety, general government, judicial, and then the legislative. Social services, other. All right. So, on page 14, this is our general fund broken down by all the different departments. And again, you're looking at 2021's actual with 3 years of budget. And again, we're asking the board to adopt 2023's budget, and 2024 is just a draft for information. Any questions on departments? Great. So then on page 16 is just another way of looking at it.
If we could go back to page 14 a moment. Why does circuit court probation or the other ones there that are blank have no appropriation, no budgeted, they get no revenue? Is that what the idea is?
That's exactly what it is.
So
They're
it
not,
comes all out of the general fund?
yes, sir. They're not a revenue producing department.
Okay, including MSU extension and,
Exactly,
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
I have a follow-up question to your last comment there. As an example, the summer youth program are all grant-based, so wouldn't that be considered revenue?
The summer youth program was actually a reimbursement, and we haven't done it for the past couple of years, so I just not putting it in the budget for this year.
Well, and maybe I'm thinking of a different program, but isn't the PPI programming and the Get Real program, isn't that all combining, or isn't it all during the summer?
I'm not, when we talk about youth center?
No, not the youth
I'm sorry.
center.
He's talking about health department.
The health
The
department,
health department. The health department is a totally different fund.
Okay,
This isn't a general fund.
so the,
Internship program,
Huh?
the youth program. Internship program.
The internship program, that would be based on different people's department, if they budgeted those dollars for an intern.
oh, okay. And you're saying that in reference to the summer youth program? Is
That
the
was
internship-
totally, something totally different that we did.
So where does that fall, I guess is my question then.
Are you talking about if someone were to have an intern?
No, the summer youth program. Maybe I'm missing something, I'm sorry. So,
I think it's pretty, wouldn't it run in like a intern program?
that's my
The money
question.
coming out of each department?
Right, that's what we're used to do. We
Yeah.
also did a totally separate program working with the community, and I don't remember, was it Community Action Agency or somebody, when Richard was here?
Oh, yeah, I
We
remember
did
that.
a youth program, that was
and Michigan Works.
Michigan Works, okay. That's what I'm not budgeting anymore, because we haven't done it for the past couple of years, and that was actually a reimbursement we did.
Okay,
So it's kind of two different things.
okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go
No,
around the
no,
corner there, but.
No, I appreciate it, I love the question.
The operating transfer in and out.
Mhm.
You would spend a couple hours with me, with me, do an excellent job of helping me understand where this stuff is. So thank you for that. details that you gave me for the, transfer out,
Page 15.
line item 32,965,285, transfer out others. There's a $50,000 amount there that, I believe needs to be reallocated. Neither department agrees that that is gonna work. That $50,000 isn't going to accomplish anything.
Are you talking about the drain commissioners, the money that's been budgeted for the drain?
The money
That's
that's-
what that $50,000.
The money, right, $50,000 that would be deposited with JDOT, so that JDOT could provide engineering services for the drain commissioner. Different engineering backgrounds, different experiences. I mean, you can't have a mechanical engineer do electrical engineering. They're different disciplines. So the money's not gonna be used. So I'm proposing we take that out, put it somewhere where it'll actually be of use.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm quite understanding your,
Pardon me?
I don't know if I'm quite understanding your request.
My request?
Yeah.
In the transfers in and out, take the $50,000 that is listed as others.
What
What
page are
page?
you on?
That is a report I ran for him.
He's on page 15.
So we don't have that.
We don't have that.
Not what we're looking at, though.
Oh.
We got another.
When I met with Cecilia and she explained a lot of stuff to me, I appreciate that. I don't have any questions left to ask her, but I got questions to ask the board because we're approving this. But
So you're saying that you want to take dollars from the drain commissioner, put it somewhere else, but I guess I'm lost in why you're wanting to do that,
I'm asking that the $50,000 that is going to be allocated to JDOT,
to JDOT.
so that JDOT engineers supposedly can assist the drain commissioner. I don't believe they can. Different engineering backgrounds, principles, experiences. You can't take a road engineer and make them a different kind of engineer. They're different disciplines.
Oh,
Well, wouldn't that
This money,
depend on the Oh, I'm sorry.
Tony, did we not hire a hydrologist at JDOT to help manage the water issues that we have in Jackson County? And isn't her discipline so much so that the drain commissioner would have preferred her to be put in his department?
we hired her. I'm not aware that he would prefer her in his department. I'm not aware of that. When he asked for more people in his department, his request was turned down.
Correct, and we said that we would allocate $50,000 for contracted services, be in JDOT, and that we'd reevaluate it at 6 months. If he'd spent through the $50,000 of contracted services, we would allocate more money, realizing that there was the necessity for a full-time employee within the drain commissioner's office. And then in 2024, we would deal with the possible employment of somebody. But until such time, the large issues that we seem to find have to do with culvert and drain repair on building sites. And it seems to be the responsibility of townships to communicate with the drain commissioner's office and JDOT when they're developing properties.
Or when existing property gets
Typically, the problem
inappropriately modified.
Typically, the problem that I've read going back 20 years is that the building inspectors in townships haven't done their job. It's an ongoing issue, and I was out on some private sites in Spring Arbor Township this past weekend. And I was asking the home builders about it. And the township is not directing them to speak to the drain commissioner. So I think it's a communications issue and an education issue on the part of all involved.
I understand that. I've had those same conversations with citizens in different townships. What I'm not seeing is any kind of resolution. Nothing is happening. The complaints that citizens have brought to me, and I have brought to JDOT and the drain commissioner, nothing's ever been fixed, not a dang thing. So whatever we're doing that's not working, if it's not working, we need to change it.
That's correct, and that's why we're allocating $50,000 to JDOT, so we can have an example of way a solution can be started. And if this doesn't work, if this solution doesn't work, then I'm sure the Board of Commissioners in 6 months will happily step up and change it again. We've moved this ball around quite a bit.
Okay, it's just, I'm aware that both departments have said this plan isn't working. Is it going to?
Well, I'm so very glad that people who haven't done something yet know whether it's going to work or not.
I might, Mr.
Who here has done anything to make it work?
That's what we're doing right now, sir.
May I suggest,
sir.
Mr. Chair, that,
I had yielded the table from Darius first.
I beg your
Darius,
pardon.
did you have comment?
Nothing further, go ahead, thank you.
I was just gonna suggest, Commissioner Bear has brought up, an aspect of next year's budget that needs further discussion. When will we be approving this budget?
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. So that's something that we can, between now and 2 weeks from now, we'll either keep it in or take it out. And, will either be a yes or no on the budget based on what is in or out.
Yeah, and I just wanted to, just to clarify my understanding of it, the $50,000 doesn't necessarily go to one engineer. In fact, could be more efficiently used than actually hiring an additional engineer, and that we could send techs out with that money at a lower cost per hour, as sometimes an engineer is not needed for some of the requests that are going on. Am I right in that?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
One of the concerns I see here, so we contract out, and I think that's a smart move to see how things work, and let's determine down the road whether or not we really need to hire somebody. But what happens when there is that conflict between departments? The drain commissioner needs that person in the road department, because that engineer still works for the road department. So what's gonna happen there? Because that, in my opinion, probably will arise.
Well, if I may, what is envisioned is $50,000 that goes to JDOT is set aside for when there's a call, because the drain commissioner had indicated that every time there's a call about some problem, he has to go out and investigate. And that, and he doesn't have time for all that, as well as site plans and everything else that he's got going on in his office. And it was suggested that we don't necessarily need the drain commissioner, or frankly, a full-fledged engineer to go out there. We have a whole lot of what we call engineering techs also that work in the engineering department with JDOT. Because part of the determination, part of the concern that the drain commissioner had indicated was that he goes out there and he's wasted his time because it's a JDOT problem, not a drain commissioner issue. The people calling don't necessarily know what issue it is. A tech could go out there and make a first pass at that to see whether it is a drain commissioner or a JDOT issue. If it's a JDOT issue, the drain commissioner would never be a part of that conversation to begin with. So the call would have come in, tech would went out, looked at it, say, yeah, we really need to clear this ditch, or whatever the case might be, the culvert's clogged, backing up onto somebody's property. And then, if we go and clean it, no harm, no foul, that kind of thing. Freeing up the drain commissioner to not have to go out on every call that he receives. If the tech comes back and says, you know what, it's over my head, I'm not really sure what's going on out there. Well, then frankly, then an engineer, we have a department there, multiple engineers. One of them would go out and take a look with the tech, would be my guess, so to discuss it. And make some determination of what the problem is. Is it really drain commissioner? Is it JDOT? Is it some combination of both? That sort of thing, what we're anticipating is going to happen. We'll see.
Thank you.
Further comments? On our agenda today is a request from the drain commissioner to approve a resolution where the drain commissioner, at a cost of $35,000, corrected the drainage problem. I believe that one was in Blackman, and hired the necessary people trying to get to the page on the engineering firm that was involved. So when things need to get done, they are getting done. Drainage Commissioner has the authority to hire engineering staff, construction staff. Yeah.
And that's not changing. That's not changing at all.
Good. It shouldn't. It can't by law. But okay, I don't see where your $50,000 gonna change anything, and I'm not sure techs are the right ones to send out. You send out a qualified engineer so that you get the right answer the first time. So I think we do need more discussion on this before we pass this budget.
Okay, so moving on, again, on page 16, I believe we looked at this slide, and it is broken down by, just another way of looking at the expenses by the department. And then on page 17, is our organizational chart. What is new for this budget? It's like kind of already happened for 2022, but this is an official document. The health department is falling under our assistant administrator, that is new on our organization chart. And it also lists our number of FTEs that we have. And then
How does the FTE count compared to the 2022 figure, just for
it
reference?
went up like maybe three,
3?
roughly, something like that. All right, so on page 18, now where this budget will leave us, and this is just as if our 2022, we close with zero revenue or expense, like even. This will, 2023 will leave us still with 23%. So my expectation for 2022 is that we will still have a positive increase to our fund balance. We should break even for 2022. So this budget will still leave us at 23%.
So this is our reserve fund?
Yes. All right, any questions on that? All right, moving on, so page 19, we list our other funds. Again, we're just talking about the general fund, but these are some other large funds that we have: Health Department, JDOT, Child Care Fund, and the Friend of the Court. On page 20.
I got a question on page 20.
Okay.
Item 269.
The law library.
Law library.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 6,500 allocated for law library.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious as to where that number came from. Month by month, when we review the financial statements, seems every month there's another 1,600, 2,000 for law books, law library improvements. How many law libraries do we have in Jackson County?
I believe this is a circuit court number, and it's by law. They have to have a separate fund for this.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have
It's online now.
Yeah, it's all online, all that stuff's online.
Well, my question is more to administration. How was this number determined? Because
Are you talking about?
remembering back to month after month, all of the expenditures for law this, law library that, 6,500 doesn't appear enough to me. So how was this number determined?
This number comes from the courts themselves. They give us their budget, what they expected to need for that.
And again, Tony, remember what we were talking on Friday, a lot of things are a placeholder, and we adjust them as we need them. Because if you look at 21, they only spent $2,208. So they didn't need the full 6,500. So some years they do, and some years they don't.
Okay. Well, first I'm going to start keeping a running tally of
Okay.
what I see on these monthly expense reports for law library.
Tony, you have 3 libraries. You have a prosecutor's library, circuit court library, and a district court library.
3 libraries.
So you have 3 libraries. So you're gonna have, it could appear monthly there are three different budgets. You have a law library expense. You're gonna have to get a net total of all three libraries to keep track of that. And at one time, we worked with the prosecutor, to combine libraries if you could, and then that was found to not work as well as it should have. And so we had to go back and separate them all again. The law libraries come to us from three different funds.
Okay.
Okay. So, any other questions?
I've got a question on a rather larger number, that being Fund 201 Transportation. We're looking at roughly 37 million in expenditures in the current year and 49 million in the next year. I know that some of that is debt service, about 6.5 million was debt service, if I recall. But what's the difference? That's a pretty big increase.
Yeah. On the next two slides, we'll talk about JDOT.
Okay, sorry.
So let's do that now. So on 21 is actually JDOT's revenues. What they're projecting for their 22-23 budget, again, we're looking at 2 years of actual and then their budget for 23 and 24, and there's also 22 in there also for their revenues. But then you were asking about expenditures, which is actually on page 22, and it's broken down by the different categories. So does this graph answer your question? I don't remember what, you were looking at 22, right?
So I'm gonna kind of think out loud here. Structural improvements are going from 11.3 million to 25.8 million. There's $12 million right there, 13 million. Rest of it looks pretty similar to the prior year.
Yeah.
So because we got a lot of federal money, it looks like, in the revenue side, we're gonna spend it on the reconstruction side then, huh?
So, one thing to point out too, their federal money, that is going up in 23 from 22. So you have like $12 million. So yeah, so that would make sense that their structural improvement would also go up. So I agree, yes.
That answers my question. Thanks, Cecilia.
You're welcome. All right. So any other questions on JDOT? Okay. So we move on to capital budgets. On page 24, this is showing the different funding, the revenue sources for our capital budget. And general fund, parks, and also intergovernmental is funding the capital improvements, and the technology cascade is all broken down for you. On page 25 is the report that I had provided when we did our budget update on the requested capital items. Any questions on those?
Well, if I read this correctly, then, for example, the JC Dot plow truck, we're allocating 200,000 of general fund?
No, JDOT.
These are JC Dot funds
Yes.
that are going for that purpose?
Yes.
In other words, it's not coming from our county general fund?
No.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so if there aren't any questions on the capital projects, the next slide is showing the millage dollars that are supporting our budget. And again, the Bill millage is not on here, therefore.
Go back to that millage slide for a second.
Any questions on that? All right. If there aren't any questions, I'm just pretty much kind of going through my proposal of the 23 budget. If there aren't any questions, I thank you for your time.
I've got some questions. The time you spent with me was appreciated. Thank you. Again, I don't have questions of you. I've got questions of administration and how some of these numbers were created. I'm looking at three different departments. County Parks. This is information I got from Cecilia when I met with her. I needed more detail. She printed it out for me, and I got it. So I reviewed it, and I've still got some questions, not for Cecilia, but for administration. So I looked at county parks budgets, I looked at the drain commissioner budget, and at the prosecuting attorney budget. So I see that for the prosecuting attorney, wages, full-time employees is going down $33,600. And I believe that's where a person was transferred from one funding source to another grant source. So there was money left over in that grant. Why is that money not left in the prosecuting attorney's budget? Why is it, I understand people moved to a different department, there was money left over, but why is it being taken away from them? One question.
Sir, would you like an answer?
Pardon me?
Would you like me to answer?
Sure.
They're general fund. We don't let general fund accounts accumulate. We have a general fund balance that accumulates.
We have fund balances for a lot of different departments.
That's right. But not, we only have one for general fund. Every department, like the health department, has its own fund balance. JDOT does. There are different funding sources. General fund is general fund, and the prosecutors are paid through general fund.
Everything for a prosecuting attorney comes from general fund monies.
Yeah, well, other than any grants or things like that he may receive. But when we, like the court or when we transfer money to them, like in general fund, the sheriff's department, if you will, we'll the prosecutor. And if we give them a $1 million budget and they only spend $900,000, they don't keep the $100,000. It's all part of general fund.
Okay?
Is another way to say that because the grant is picking up some of the salary costs, the general fund doesn't have to bear it? That's another way to say this.
Okay, my next question is with parks. I'd like to know what's happening with our staff in parks, because wages for parks is going up $117,307. In the admin account, wages are going up $40,000. Pleasant Lake account, wages are going up $1,000. Cascade Falls, wages are going down $2,400. Parks General, wages are going up $51,000. Queens Lake, wages are going up $1,000. Healy Park, wages are going down $12,000. Parks Equipment's going up $1,800. Sparks Parks, wages are going up almost $1,400. Event Center, wages are going up $34,000. So, I like our parks. So when I see that Keeley Park wages are going down $12,000, what's causing that?
Most likely, it's a transfer of a person to a different park or something like that. He's tracking them there. Yeah, straightforward, and then, of course, union contract settlements, so all the wages will go up with that.
So Keeley Park down $12,000 means that some staff person is being transferred to a different position?
It's either that, or someone left who is on the higher scale, and they've hired somebody on the lower scale. But the question really, you're on the Parks Board, bring it up to the Parks Board, and ask Kyle, the Parks Director, for the breakout. I'm sure he's got that. All
Did Kyle
probably have it too.
Did Kyle establish these wage changes?
If it's a union, no, I don't do that. If it's a union contract, it would be per union contract. And if it's all the other employees, this body here, this board here, grants raises, you granted 3% raise last January, so that would be reflected in there.
Okay, so the admin account, Pleasant Lake. Okay. So in the admin account for administration, Parks Administration, wages are going up $40,458. Pay increases for,
Sounds like another person even.
pardon me?
Sounds like another body to me. We won't know, I can't answer that. We'll have to sit down and look at that. As the Parks Board though, and you're on the Parks Board, you guys approved that budget, the Parks Board budget, and reviewed it. And so,
Guess I don't remember reviewing it in this detail. Okay, I'll schedule a time with Kyle to see what,
I'm sure he can walk you right through it.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further commissioner questions?
None for me at this time.
Does the general public have any comments or questions? Public hearing. I asked Peter, did you have something you wanted to know?
I was curious about the, I know Tony mentioned the expenditure by JDOT. I saw an expenditure there by the sheriff's department for 200 and some thousand for vehicles, and I wondered if that had been previously approved by this board. I didn't recall it, so I might have not been here for one meeting.
This is where it starts. Now he will put out bids and bring back the actual on those vehicles. Now, the Board of Commissioners started probably 12 or 14 years ago, a schedule of vehicle purchases for the sheriff's department because it was anticipated that instead of having to buy 12 or 15 all at once, we would make sure that we buy between 3 and 5 a year, and that way it wouldn't impact the county budget with dips and rises being so bad. A lot of times what'll happen too is that if a vehicle is involved in a car accident and totaled, we won't replace that vehicle, but insurance will be replacing that vehicle. That'll take that money back out of that line item and put it back into the general fund budget. So it's always been allocate the $200,000, contemplate buying 5 vehicles. Hopefully, we don't have to buy 5 vehicles because Facilities Department will do a maintenance study on all the vehicles and see if we're just changing oil, or if now we're starting to, do transmissions and ball joints and that type of stuff where it becomes cost prohibitive for a vehicle. So, yeah, so we've worked through, we've had an allocated process on the capital side of the sheriff's cars for quite a while. And we've applied that same formula to the health department and to other departments that have vehicles that they're mandated to use.
And one other question, I noticed that this budget is assuming the passage of the jail millage. What happens if that millage doesn't pass?
Actually, this budget's balanced without the jail millage.
Is it?
Yeah.
It wasn't in the new millage is not in the general fund.
Thank you.
Comments or questions? Hearing is now closed, and we move on to item 6, 2021 Drain Commission. Provided by Drain Commissioner Jeffrey Snyder. Welcome, Jeff. Thank you, sir, for coming this morning.
Welcome. Thank you. The discussion has taken place today, morning, since my ops and JDOT needs some explanation, I think. JDOT has a responsibility to manage the water that's generated from their road right-of-way, and that naturally flows into their road right-of-way. They do that through their roadside ditches, their culverts, their cross tubes. And they costs into the projects. My office responds to requests for patients, and if the problems are of the nature that requires a public improvement, then they petition my office to a county drain, take it through the hearing, acquire easements, and if necessary, hire an engineer, let the contract costs, and then specially assess them against the benefiting municipalities and properties. KDOT gets its funding from Act 51. I get for my projects is through special assessments. The process does not begin until somebody, municipality of property owners, that's for petitions for a county drain. When you read the annual report, it includes all the dollars that have been expended by my office to the penny. It also includes, as referenced in the index, the other things that I have to do thoroughly. For example, if a subdivision or a condominium comes into the county, my office has to review it and approve it. My goal when I review and approve is to make sure that the developer ends up with the costs and they're not visited on adjacent property owners, for example. I don't want them flooding the neighbors out. Those neighbors are going to come to me and say, remedy this. So my job is to anticipate what can go wrong on that project, make sure the developer takes the necessary steps to address them at his cost. 2001, Jackson County, and 8 townships, was dwindled down to 4, but nevertheless, were required to do stormwater permit. Water permits are issued through the US EPA and require certain plans and certain actions. Those plans and actions included Upper Grand River Watershed Management Plan. That plan requires municipalities, MS4, Community Summit, Ackman, Leone County, to anticipate the problems that are related to the stormwater and pollutants being carried to the Grand River. You look at, for example, page 3 of the annual report. Since 2005, there have been 3,059 tons of pollutants removed from, including biochemical sediment, nitrogen, phosphorus, oil, and grease, prior to being discharged into the river. Pretty significant. There are 3 limitations the state's imposed upon the Grand River. Biological oxygen demand, coli, biota. Oxygen demand and the biota, or the health of the stream, as measured by microinvertebrate. Those are results of sediment. Sediment vary. The food base that the microinvertebrate require impacts fish, fossils, everything else in the stream. While there are similar requirements between JDOT and my office to water. That's, management is, I don't know what the expertise may be similar. And something that, technology, hydraulics, civil engineering. Can't send a technician out to anticipate what problems are. The function of an engineer. Can't send a technician out to determine the extent of a necessary repair. When I get a phone call from my constituent, such as, hey, I've got some problems, I'm knowing when to go out. Those typically come in the springtime. Frost in the ground, get a 50-year storm, one is going to cause problems. At the exact same time, JDOT has similar problems. I need that help. I anticipate I'm going to have to call JDOT and say, hey, I need some help, send somebody over. My guess is I'm going to get the response that I anticipate. We're pretty busy now, too. The job has gotten done and will continue to get done by myself. The problem that I'm trying to eliminate is we run around and delay in responding to a complaint. The way that I can assure that a complaint is properly responded to is handle it. Unless I'm allowed to train somebody to handle it in my absence. Or when it appears as though it's going to be a month or two where a response is provided to that constituent that's raised a complaint. Obviously, you folks have to handle the dollars. I appreciate that. But I've worked with the road commission. I work with them daily. And look in your report. Complaint investigations. Page 17
What document, sir?
is, I'm sorry,
His report, page 17.
the annual report. It shows examples of complaint investigations that have taken place. When the complaint reports are written up by my office, they identify the complaint that's brought to my attention by a telephone call or by a county commissioner or by a supervisor. I then go out in the field and I analyze the what's causing the problem and what are the alternative remedies to that problem. Technicians in a position to identify those alternatives.
I'm sorry, you said are or are not?
Are not. With those alternatives also comes a price tag. That price tag is do nothing, and it costs you nothing. You live with the problem. Second alternative is, let's talk to your neighbor who's redirected his water onto you. That's a trespass, but that's something that is between the two of you, but I can negotiate a remedy maybe. It takes time. The problem that's related to a road, the action taken would be to refer it to JDOT for inspection and scheduling for a remedy. Whatever or finally, petition for a county drain. Whatever that remedy is, that property knows when I completed that report what he has to do, and he has to choose one. If it is a county drain improvement, I work with him to develop that petition, public hearing, special assessment process, make sure that when that petition is signed, everybody knows what it's going to cost, or the ballpark of what it's going to cost. That's not something a technician can do. But out of the 130 complaints, 41 of them directly related last year to JDOT-related jurisdiction.
Could you repeat that? Of the 142 service requests, how many were directly related to JDOT?
I think 40-some.
40, okay.
40 out of 131, is that what I heard correctly?
That is correct.
Thank you.
The other problem that
And of those, how many did you notify JDOT of, and did we put on record so that when they're doing construction in those townships, they can work on? And I know there's been an ongoing issue in Summit Township that didn't get a remedy because JDOT wasn't notified of it.
talking about Lincoln Court,
That's one.
I don't know what you're talking about otherwise.
Well, there's Vandermeer, there were others that appear on this document, and JDOT's been formally notified that they've got to help work towards a solution.
Without exception. But the problem that I observe is that they've got technicians running the millage-funded road projects for the townships. I have the engineers do it. They make decisions in the field, not based on engineering, but maybe on budget. And problems remain unresolved.
Nobody from J, that's here to, about that.
Right, well, back in the day.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Well, when an accusation like that's made, it would be nice for the other side to be here for clarification.
Well,
And
the
They'll
chairman
have their
asked me a
chance if they want it.
question
Yeah.
related
Accept
to-
this claim.
I know you
Chairman asked me a
accept it, it's on
question
there.
related to Lincoln Court. When you have water coming from two high points, pooling at the low point,
It's been going on for how long, Jeff? According to your documentation?
according to my documentation, the complaint came to me last year on
Your-
the heels of the road improvement.
No, the engineering that I read and or conversation that I read from your office on the complaint came in the 1980s. And were directed to your office then.
That's
And when you were
Sunset Park.
asked,
That was Sunset Park, that was not.
that's all part of that area.
Well, Lincoln Court is a different complaint form. But if you want to discuss Sunset Park, I'm happy to do that too. We did work with JDOT on Sunset Park. There were known problems in 2 areas of Sunset Park. I did meet with their technician and pointed those problems out. Shot elevations. We knew what the problems were and what the remedy are. And as a part of construction, a cross culvert was put in at a location that would have remedied the problem had there been cooperation by the property owners to remedy the problem. That cooperation wasn't forthcoming, either for JDOT or for my office.
Can you not mandate that cooperation, sir?
I have no ability to tell JDOT what to do.
No, I'm referring to the property owners. The complaint is on your record.
It is.
Yeah, can't you not mandate according to that problem, take care of this way?
Well, that's a misconception. I have no ability under the drain code to mandate anything. I have the ability to respond to a petition, but one has not been forthcoming. Either by, and that petition can be filed by you folks, on behalf of JDOT. It can be filed by the Summit Township, it can be filed by the property owners. There's 2 problems, one out on an alley and one out on land that keeps getting developed. Like my recommendation is the township quit issuing building permits. You got a flooding problem, but making it worse. They nevertheless continue to issue building permits. That becomes a problem. It is going to demand a remedy because there's 2 properties getting flooded out as a result. In the basement. I have no ability as drain commissioner to mandate a project. They all result in special assessments. The statute precludes drain commissioner's ability to encourage or discourage county drainage. It's left to an independent board of determination. As I get a petition, I can't mandate anything. All I can do is put the alternatives down for a property owner to choose from. They choose to petition for a county drain, and I proceed.
That petition you need, did I hear you right, can be generated by the Board of Commissioners
In behalf of JDOT,
on behalf of JDOT?
yes. Or
Can JDOT petition that them directly?
statute provided that they could when they were a road commission. It's changed, it's now a county department, so the county.
Okay, so now the only entity that could create that petition is the Board of Commissioners.
Or the township, or the property owners themselves that
Okay.
have the problem. But these are the problems that are inherent in my office. Look at that budget that was proposed. We're looking at a little over $200,000 in my budget. You look at, I was first elected a couple terms ago, 1976, combined budgets of the DPW in my office, which are now one department, was over $265,000. Just in salaries alone, hourly wages, no fringes, no benefit, no telephone, no any other line item, just hourly rate. That's what you call efficiency. 40-some-odd 5 years later, a budget, complete departmental budget, is still below those hourly rates. But it kind of addresses the difference between JDOT in my office and our responsibility. The other problem that the office has is while I don't issue permits, I issue approval letters for site plans, and there's a number of them that go through. The drain office 2 years ago, 31 developments received my review, takes time out in the field. 4 of those 31 were solar farms that incorporated more than 4,000 acres. Takes time. Takes time to anticipate problems that can be derived from 4,000 acres of runoff. Something I wouldn't trust a technician to do.
That's correct, because the technician would do the work, and you would have to review it and sign off on it,
The
sir.
technician wouldn't have the ability to go out and anticipate, because he's not been trained to anticipate.
His objective is not to anticipate, sir. He's to gather the information for you. He's not writing theory. He's coming back to you with the information, and you produce it.
That's non-knowledgeable position to assume, since my job as drain commissioner is to anticipate the problems, start engineering based upon given storms, either a 50-year storm or a 100-year storm. What is going to be the result, given the grades, given this, that, and the other, of the runoff from this proposed development? It's not something that a technician is able to do. Nor is he able to look at the culvert sizing that's going to be required to be provided at each one of the entrances to these developments. Something that I do on behalf of the JDOT. And I'm glad to do it, because that eliminates one more problem that's got to be cured. And technicians don't do that. But that's enough about the relationship that we have with Jackson County and JDOT.
I'd like to interject that as an architect, when I had inspections to do, I never sent technicians out. They don't have the experience, they don't know what to look for. And when technicians were sent out over my objection, the reports were not worth much. Had to go back and do them again. When you're going out doing technical evaluations, you send some of your top people out. You don't send the young guy that's just learning. You may take that young guy along with you, which I did, and I taught them in the field what they needed to look for. I taught them how to find the problems, and then they became more valuable. But, no, you don't send a technician out to do an engineer's job. Not qualified.
Right?
Yeah, and in some respects, I agree with Tony here. It sounds like this could be a situation where we send out a technician, report comes into Jeff, and it's of a quality where he's still got to go out and verify what's there. So there's some redundancy there. I'm not, and I can appreciate the plan that the administration's put forth to do a test program. Let's see what happens. Let's see what the results are going to be. You know, and we know that $50,000 number. I don't know what that number is if we had to, or if we wanted to hire an engineer and total cost, salaries, benefits like that. Yeah.
What we're doing is we're attempting to get an evaluation. We don't know at all. Do you?
No, that's why I'm
the point.
asking you guys.
That's the point. That's why we put $50,000 in there. But now we're being told that it's the wrong idea to explore a solution and review it in 3 months than it is to put together a possible solution. That's what we're trying to do. We don't know. We're hoping that observations will be made, and they'll be shared with the whole Board of Commissioners, and we can turn around and say that this is what we need to do. We have inadequate engineering within the Drain Commissioner's office, and we need to get more people on the ground and get things taken care of. And we need to hire an additional engineer. That's the question. Do we administratively look at this? Do we need a larger department? Does the department have a $500,000 budget? Right now, according to the Drain Commissioner, he says he doesn't have that big a budget. What I just reviewed, he had $223,000 in expenditures in '22, and the Board of Public Works spent $282,000. So that's $505,000 in the Drain Board of Public Works budget. I realized that his allocation that he likes to use as his measurement is his salary and labor costs. But there's other things that have gone on within these departments that we have to take care of. And we're gonna have a solution here in 20 minutes that we're hopefully gonna have for the part of the landfill issue that Jackson County has to take care of. So it's a moving target, and it's not just one item. If it was one item, life would be much simpler for all of us. We'd say, hire another engineer, put him to work doing this work, have him evaluate all those properties, and now that engineer and I can take care of the water problems in Jackson County.
Well, I think that, I've heard both the word technician, I've heard the word engineer. And when we've talked about in other conversations about this, it would be if we were to move Drain Commissioner Snyder out to JCDOT, he would have the services of an engineer available for him, and that's where I thought that $50,000. So how do we determine who needs to go out, whether it's a technician or an engineer? Because I do worry about duplication of services. And those are the details, I'm sure, that have to be worked out. And like I said to begin with, I think this is not a bad approach to determine whether or not we do need to hire somebody. But I want to make sure that we send out the right person in the beginning, whether it's an engineer or tech. I'm not of that expertise level to determine that. Thank you.
Final note, with respect to...
Commissioner Kenny would like to make a comment.
Just one question, very clear, you're adamant that you don't like the proposal of the $50,000 to get you help from the engineers out at JCDOT. How long have you operated without this second engineer that you had requested?
It's been 8 or 10 years since I've had an engineer in the office.
Thanks.
One final...
Just 1 second, I'm sorry. I guess my question is more so for administration. When developing the plan for the text and all that, how much conversation has went from county drain commission and administration in developing this plan?
I've had lots of conversations. This is not a first time we've had this problem or the first time we've had this conversation. If I may take a minute to explain. Jeff has indicated that he goes out on every call. And at least some of those calls is not necessary for him. It's a JDOT problem. The idea too that Jeff has indicated that he wants to have an engineer. He's told me he wants to hire another full-time engineer to work for him. Jeff's been drain commissioner since the 70s. He won't be drain commissioner forever. And his thought was that he would train an engineer, and that way you have some continuity in the office and all that. Makes sense to me. The problem is, no problems there. One, just because you hire an engineer and spend a year, we got like 2 years until the next election, 2 years training them, indoctrination, and helping them understand everything. Doesn't mean they'll be here. Engineers come and go all the time. We lose engineers regularly to other counties, other organizations that pay more than we do. So while I appreciate the sentiment for the you know, the continuity there and the cross-training and this and that. There's no guarantee that person, he or she, will even be here when the time comes, nor is there any indication that if they even wanted to run, that they could win an election. Not that they couldn't continue to work in the county, whether they win or run or not. But the idea for us was, let's have, I've been here 11 years. For 11 years, I've been seeing this. He'll blame it on JDOT, they blame it on him. I'm like, you know what? We have the new drain commissioner, and there will be one. I want them to sit out there at JDOT, because now the family's together. They don't do this. They don't have to call anyone. No one has to come over to his office. It's down the hall, his office. And now they can talk daily, or at the water fountain, or what have you. And when someone calls and says, hey, I got water in my front yard, the culvert is clogged, I believe, and it won't flow. I got it on this side of the yard, but not that side. There's a cross culvert underneath the drive. We don't need Jeff to go out there on that water problem. I don't need an engineer to go out there on that water problem. I'll send a tech out. They'll go, culvert's clogged. Now, if they get out there and they see there is water coming from, 100 acres away down some swale that's running into the road, the problem got more complicated. You know what? The culvert's clogged, but there's a bigger problem. The culvert's undersized, or whatever the case may be. They may not know. They'll bring an engineer out there to do it. Maybe the drain commissioner himself or herself would go out and take a look at it. But my point is, you don't have to have, he doesn't have the time to go out on every call. He's made that clear. Engineers are a lot more money, and frankly, are busy people as well. They don't necessarily need to go out on a culvert clogged call. Or the ditch is full, how do we deal with it? It needs dug out. Do we expect engineers techs to be engineers? No. But they can recognize if a problem is, there's going to need some engineering on this, or we're going to need the drain commissioner's expertise on this. And they can take that first pass and have that conversation. Is it perfect? No. But is there ever perfect? No. So that's the plan, is to have them go out there and work it out, see how it works out. It's just that simple. We don't know. I can tell you that hiring an engineer full-time in Jeff's office is going to be way more than $50,000.
Sure, yeah.
And we'll go from there.
So, and I say this respectfully, I don't know if moving forward with a plan where the drain commissioner saying, or he believes that is not going to work, is the best idea. Granted, I know we have to do something, and I appreciate that there's some things being done, but if the drain commissioner is already saying that 9 times out of 10, not to put words in his mouth, but 9 times out of 10 that this isn't going to work, I think that the administration and drain commissioner's office need to continue to have further discussion to develop a plan that works, because it doesn't make sense for us to come back in 3 months to potentially, or most likely say, hey, we tried this and it didn't work, and now we have to spend more money to do it.
Yeah, I've worked with Jeff for 11 years. Jeff pretty much has his way of thinking, and there it is. We don't agree. We want to try something that's different, because clearly there's a whole lot of finger pointing.
Sure.
Mike, you've said that twice now.
I stand by it too, sir.
Well, let me educate the rest of the commissioners then. There isn't any of this going on.
That's not true, and I sit here
I
and know it, and I hear it from all the other commissioners, yeah?
You don't hear it from me.
Yes, I do, sir.
You don't hear it from me.
Yes, you do. I hear from you that JDOT won't do its job. That's what I hear from you.
That doesn't say they're pointing fingers at each other.
I make a service request report on every issue that comes to my attention. I don't do the round robin and blame it on somebody else. I go out and I address it. In black and white, in every instance, there is no finger pointing. There never has been. Now,
Be careful on that, Jeff, because I can go back to McCain Road, and we can talk about finger pointing, that we had to send community corrections people out there to find your drain. So let's be careful. Don't say never. Don't use that word with anybody.
There's never any finger pointing.
Yes, there was. You said it wasn't there. And JDOT said it was.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Mr. Chair, if I may, we're kind of at a point in discussion here. In some ways, it's kind of healthy, but in some ways, it's not. I would request at this time, if the grain administrator has any closing comments, that we would move forward at this time.
I would like to have another comment
Go ahead.
before we move away from this.
Sure.
Forcing two offices into one building is not going to eliminate what you claim is finger pointing. It won't. In the offices that I've worked in, if people don't agree, people have been in adjacent cubicles where they can see each other over the top, and they still point fingers and blame the other person. They still blame the other person while the person's over that cubicle listening. So if you think putting them in the same building is going to be a cure, no. That's a fool's hope.
I don't think it'll be a cure. What I don't think it'll eliminate is their inability to talk to each other, because
No,
we're in the same
it
space.
won't do that because we got a report coming up again soon that talks about how today's work environment is different. People work remotely. And people can work remotely because they're doing it over the internet. They're doing it by Zoom. These two departments can be at different coasts. They can still totally communicate, get everything done. You don't need to force people into the same building at the detriment of either or both parties. Unless you are one that just doesn't believe in remote working, doesn't believe in departments working things out together through Zoom.
Actually, I frankly believe, in all honesty, that people work together when they're across the table from each other. But that doesn't change the reality of that Zoom is here. And in some cases, Zoom is a practical approach to doing the work that we have to do for our citizens. In this specific case, I don't think it's necessarily relevant here. But frankly, I take my direction from the board. The alternative is to spend about $150,000 for an engineer, full Benny, who may or may not be necessary, or who may, after a year of Jeff's tutelage, take that tutelage and leave some and go somewhere else. Or we could put him over there with JDOT, where they have, 6 engineers? I guarantee you one of them will probably be here next year. Some cross-training could happen. Is it a perfect solution? No. Is there a perfect solution? No. But it's worth trying to do it that way, before we just hire an engineer.
According to JDOT's director,
He's not here currently. If you wish to speak for her.
I had a conversation with her.
I've had many.
Many more than you have with me.
Correct. She works directly for me, reports to me, you're elected.
My question to her was, do you see this working? Her answer was only with special projects. I don't need JDOT when I have a special project. I am my own consultant and a specially assessed. We can have the conversation later. So, get back to the annual report. Jackson Board of Commissioners voted to authorize a lawsuit. When we put it in the county's name, and reflected that concluded this year, started last year, but it wasn't concluded this year, with a judgment in favor of Jackson County. Looking for a recommendation to the full board to accept my annual report.
I move that we send this report to the full board.
Is there a second?
I'll support that.
Any questions to the motion?
We could just approve accepting it here, couldn't we?
We could, but it
All right.
works better on Tuesday nights.
Okay.
it's a report, you're not gonna approve it, you're just gonna accept it, like you do every other
I know, that's why I
report
was,
that comes.
I understand, that's why I was confused, you were forwarding it to the full board.
You're the one that made the motion, Commissioner Bear.
For the full board to provide the acceptance of this report.
Okay, that's not what you said. You stated to the full board. Well, which would have meant it goes to Tuesday night. We have a second on that motion. We'll put it on the consent calendar and it'll appear Tuesday night. Is that what you want, or do you want to rescind that and go back and make it acceptance here right now?
I would draw my support,
Okay?
so you can amend your.
I still believe a study session is not the right place to vote on a lot of these things. I believe it's the full board. I've been consistent with that. We've been boxed into some
Right.
situations where we've had to make decisions here.
Right? I
But
completely
to clarify
agree
my
with you.
motion, I would like this report to be sent to the full board at the Board of Commissioners meeting for that board's acceptance.
I will support.
Any questions to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? We carry. Drain Commissioner obstruction notice. Commissioner Kennedy, I beg that I have to leave, sir. I apologize.
Okay.
I'll be listening on Zoom.
The board docs included a packet that, sets forth the procedure that a drain commissioner has to go through when he incurs an expense to remove an obstruction that the property owner is permitted to occur within a county drain. The end result of that is a special assessment levied against that property owner if he fails or refuses to respond to the notice, remove the obstruction. That was the event in this case. To get it on the special assessment roll in September, we need the approval of the Board of Commissioners to authorize Drain Commissioner to go like that special assessment. Is there questions on the resolution or my recommendation?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Snell.
I'd like to move that we forward this to the full board for recommendation.
Support?
All right.
Or with the recommendation that we approve this.
I think this is gonna go to committee anyways, but.
Okay, I can send it to the committee.
Sure.
Let's do that.
I'll support that.
Fair enough. Discussion?
Question, discussion? Why does this need to go to committee? Drain Commissioner has performed the work that was needed. The problem that somebody else created has been corrected. There was money involved, there's adequate documentation. I think we should send this to the full board for approval, with a recommendation of approval.
Because that hasn't followed the standard process that you wanted in the past, but I don't really have a problem with the resolution itself, Tony. So, Commissioner Snell, or Commissioner Pileski, sorry.
We are both wearing glasses.
Commissioner Snell is much more attractive,
Yeah.
though. I suppose my observation with respect to Commissioner Bear's comment is that someone is going to, this Tara Jackson firm is going to have on the order of $35,000. And I think the more public discussion there is of it, the better to protect their rights.
I agree, thank you.
And so if we have it at committee and then at public and then at full board, they have every opportunity to complain about it should they choose to do so.
Yep, there's no time constraint here where that would be a problem, is there?
There is.
There is?
To
Okay.
the extent that it gets on our tax roll, after coordinated through the township, just after resolution. Township has to approve their rolls in September also. I'm not sure if
got a committee meeting preceding the full board. If we do, I can discuss it then.
And, on the same time schedule.
The township would have to approve it by when, sir? What would
They
be the
don't
latest?
approve it, they just have to get it on their assessment roll.
Yeah. Once we approve it, it's gotta go on, right? They don't have to do anything more, do they?
What is your deadline for which you need Board of Commissioner approval
Gotta be this month.
this month?
Okay, so we're good.
So we have time.
We have time.
Okay.
When is the next committee?
Next week.
Next week, and then it would be passed at the following week's Tuesday meeting. Tuesday night.
September 20th.
September 20th.
19th or something, isn't it?
20th.
20th? I won't be here. I'm going up to the UP for vacation, so is that something that somebody else feels comfortable leading through the committee?
I'll make a motion at that Board of Commissioners meeting to approve this.
This would go under, general government? No,
No public safety.
public safety, it might be under my committee, yeah, so. I don't anticipate a problem with the resolution passing.
I don't either.
Yeah, we do.
The process that a couple commissioners like it to go through the channel, that's all we're talking about right now. As long as you're
Were
okay
there any
with,
questions on the resolution of the effects?
No, it's pretty clear.
not for me, does anyone else have any? No,
Everything was very clear.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
there is a motion.
Vote on that, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you wouldn't mind, Sarah, could you read that motion?
Yes, the motion is to move this resolution to committee with recommendation for approval. And it was motioned by Ray Snell and supported by Darius Williams.
That, so can we take a vote, please?
Like roll call?
Roll call be fine.
Commissioner Bear,
Yes.
Commissioner Walls,
Yes.
Commissioner Pulaski,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Snell,
Yes.
Chairman Kennedy.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Snyder, for your reports today. That takes us to item number 7A, Jackson County Facilities Assessment White Paper.
And here comes Doug.
Hello, Doug.
Terry, working with Region 2 in concert, undeveloped this white paper.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Doug Terry, representing Region 2. A little bit of background, I am a Concord resident, long-term Concord resident, and a recently retired city manager. Under the direction of Mike Overton, Region 2 was given the task of looking at our facilities. Approximately, we have altogether about 954,000 square feet of office and building. Region 2 looked at about over 600,000 square feet. And to begin with, I want to personally thank Mike, Rick, Garrett, Nikki, and Tony for giving me the opportunity to really look at this. And the two things that we found interesting and why we wanted to pursue this is that, one, COVID-19 had turned our world upside down. As you know, as a governmental entity, we were all forced, and at that time, being a city manager, we were forced to shut down City Hall. Now, we did our work, and a lot of us did go to work with excluding the public from entering the building, but it also came to the question about people working from home. So that was one aspect that Region 2 looked at. The other is that in Jackson County, what are our physical facilities like? What do we need to do? So as I had mentioned earlier, when we had done the jail study, I took what it would affect, how it would affect the taxpayers of the county. My taxable value on my own personal house is about $82,000. So when you equate that, a little over 82,000, to put a 1 mil on the ballot would cost me $83 a year for the next, whatever it takes to retire that debt. We felt that Anita and I talked about this, and of course, I have children that live here, and I thought that I'm so glad that the commissioners are asking the taxpayers to consider this. And the reason why was because it was important that my kids, my family safety was paramount. So that $83 a year is worth asking the taxpayers to take a look at. So we're taking a look, we took a look at 4 facilities after the jail. We took a look at the Human Services Building at the North Lawn facility. We took a look at the Friend of the Court. We took a look at the courthouse, and we took a look last at this building. A lot of those buildings, 3 of those buildings were built within a couple of years. The Friend of the Court was started in 1926, opened in 1929. This building was built in 1929, and the Elks Club originally started building the courthouse in 1929. So with that in mind, we took a look at both of those and had a chance to talk to department heads, to talk about how people could work from home. And that was important because if we have people working from home, do we really need to maintain all of these facilities? And I think as commissioners, you were interested in, as always, and you should be, in trying to save money. So we took a look at what we could do and what we should do, and the jail really did kind of throw a curveball into this whole thing. The reason why I say that is because if we're going to increase taxes, how much can counties, taxpayers absorb? Fixed income, and so we thought, well, $83 for Doug and Anita to pay. If we were to make or ask taxpayers for more money, could they withstand that? So, and I'll get right to the bottom line. Because of the talent that y'all have under your control and under Mike's direction, Rick's team has been able to substantially save this county a lot of money. We have problems, we know, because of the age of the building. Something that came in that Mr. Kahn, when he designed this building, was technology. Technology has cost us to be able to surgically go in, which costs a lot of money, put new conduit in, run wire. That's always been a real challenge. Another challenge is the cast iron pipes. We have a lot of concrete floors, and the way that the concrete floors are designed are in such a shape that coring, actually going through, is a very expensive process. Fortunately, Rick, Derek, and their maintenance team has done an excellent job of being able to do this. One of the complaints, though, that we have encountered from a lot of the employees is the difficulty of regulating the heat and the cooling, because we use hot water heat in both the courthouse here and at Friend of the Court. Well, we also use it at the Human Services Building too. Another one is the dilemma of trying to surgically go in and work with sanitary sewer. Again, cast iron pipe has caused us we're dealing with a lot of the original pipe. As you know, sewage can be acidic, eats away, corrodes. Same thing with the cast iron pipe used in the water system. those were some of the things that we had encountered as far as the difficulties of maintaining these buildings. We know that the jail, out of all our facilities, probably needs the most attention. And I'm glad that the commissioners are going to ask our taxpayers to consider a new jail. Not promoting it, but at least we're asking. Not to put too much more burden on the taxpayers, because again, in my particular case, it'll be $83 a year. But also the idea of finding that balance of tax effort and affordability. So, get to the bottom line again, is that I believe that we should maintain these facilities that we've studied. I don't see a trend in a lot of people working from home. I will say this. I know, and I'll use I have a daughter who is a human resources supervisor nearby. It won't identify her employer, but it's a substantial one in this county. I said, Grace, what is the trend today? Are people working from home? What is the recruiting effort? And you can see on Jackson County's own Help Wanted the amount of turnover we have. And I think Jackson County is a pretty good place to work. Problem is that with the trends in employment today, recruiting, a lot of people want to work from home. Grace Catherine works from home, and she's an HR supervisor. And there's hybrid models where people are working 3 days at home, coming in 2 days a week. There's different things. But what we found in Jackson County's case was that we're not going to be able to change our footprint because some people, and we deal with the public all the time, are not going to be able to work from home. We deal with the public. And the public has to have access to us. There are people on your team that do have employees that do work from home. It's just a handful that we found in our survey with our supervisors. Again, our business is a little bit different because our citizens have to have access to us. And so that's why it makes it difficult. A lot of times they feel comfortable dealing on face-to-face. So we're a little bit more unique than the private sector. Our recommendation is that, again, we continue to fund maintenance of these facilities. I think that we can get a lot more years out of them. I think that the talent that you have on your staff has contributed to a lot of savings. And so please challenge me in discussing any of our findings, because I think that it's important. I just got done listening to a discussion, and as a former city manager, I had to bite my tongue on some things, but it was difficult. But please challenge me on your thoughts about maintaining these facilities. I know you all have questions.
I knew that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for reading my mind. Thanks, Doug, for the report. Thanks to the administration for charging you with putting it together. And I suppose my initial thoughts are that we appreciate the work here, but I view it only as the beginning of the work. I don't know whether I'm going to make some for instances. For instance, do we know which and how many of our employees might be able to work from home? Do we know which and how many of our employees must meet with the public? Do we know how many square feet we have in each office for each employee? I think about, for example, our drain commissioner that just came to mind, occupies a floor of this building. There's him and his assistant.
Right.
That's a lot of square feet per person, but he has some storage needs too, I'm sure. There are other, I mean, there are needs of our employees in the realm of storage. I'm sure the clerk could speak to that. But it seems to me there's some pretty significant analysis that I guess I would like to see done, so that, and then a comparison perhaps to what is done in the private sector. How many square feet per people do we need? And with I guess I had hoped that this particular analysis would be done with a view toward how can we reduce our usage of public buildings. All of the comments that are made here are absolutely correct, but how do we go about reducing our overall building usage? And the only way to do that is to close a building, okay? You can't just move somebody off a floor and say we saved money because we didn't. The building is still there, for example. Again, appreciation for the beginning of the work, but I view that only as the beginning of the work.
Okay, so I did have an opportunity to talk to supervisors and staff about this, and obviously mine. Let's take a few examples. In Gary's case, his floor is 3,000 square feet. There are two people that work up there, himself and his assistant. A lot of his space is utilized by the actual documentation that are stored in his files. He has a nice floor. He does have room. However, and as pointed out, that could some of that storage be moved out? And of course, that's between him and you as far as coming up with another workable plan, as far as moving to JDOT. Will that?
Yeah, I'm sorry to have brought that as an example. I don't want to kind of irritate anything, but I simply note as an example of some of the analysis that needs to be done is what is the most appropriate office space that we have for all of our departments in the county, bearing in mind, as you've noted clearly in here, that all of our buildings were constructed for some other purpose, right? This was a bank, and the courthouse was a Elks Lodge, and out there is a medical care facility. So none of them are appropriate to their current use, I think you would say, but how best to use them and how to save our taxpayers money by putting people to work that we've proven can be done at home or elsewhere or at hotel facilities. I don't see anything about hotel office space here for those who don't need an actual office but might need to have space here in the building or somewhere to work from time to time on site. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. We took a look at surrounding buildings. As you know, some of the offices by constitution have to be located within the county seat, have to be within the city of Jackson. We took a look at some of the surrounding buildings and the possibilities. We even I had a conversation with the CEO of one of those offices that are nearby, taking a look at the possibility of maybe even moving the court, combining this and the court building together in one facility. I did have that conversation. One of the problems that we had encountered is you're absolutely correct. It wasn't originally designed, so now we're getting into renovation costs. And what we're finding is that because of COVID and supply chain issues and all the inflationary issues we ran into, the cost per square foot a lot of times is more to surgically go in, renovate, than it is to build from new. And as we found in the jail, institutional building, commercial building, right now, and it's going down, is anywhere from $800 to $1,000 a square foot, depending on the degree of difficulty required. Concrete, steel, and try to get steel right now is a challenge. So we did take a look at around here. Again, what would need to be done in what you're, I think, suggesting is that we're not so much looking at buildings now. Is there a process of government taking a different philosophy in the way that we utilize our employees and in the way they interact with our citizens? That probably a pretty good.
That could be a part of the entire analysis, yes.
Okay.
Doug, didn't you do that? Didn't you talk to all the department heads and it was about work from home?
Yeah, I'll give you.
Could you elaborate?
I'll give you an example. Sarah Davis works over at Friend of the Court, the director. We talked about people working from home, and there could be some support staff over there, the people that work with the state of Michigan, just dealing with the money aspect. That's a possibility of people working from home. But because of the nature of the way the Friend of the Court operates, which can be a very volatile and hostile environment, as you know. She came from Grand Rapids, and she said, you know, for the building, the way it's set up, and there could be some improvements, obviously, I pointed those out, is that it's set up perfect for dealing with public in that kind of environment. We did take a look at, you know, like Rick's team, could there be people working from home? Well, most of those people have to go from job site to job site on a daily basis. They still have to have a place to work out. And the other thing is, too, is one of the things that we're seeing in a trend, Jack Welch, former chairman of General Electric, said when the internet came out, we are losing our ability to communicate because we're not interfacing. So people aren't getting maybe the real story sometimes. I'm afraid that could happen too, is that we lose our ability to effectively communicate as a team. If we have one part of our staff working from home and another here, we lose that vital information that we need, that interaction as human beings. I'm thinking that, and Earl, we'll be more than happy, Region 2 would be more than happy to go back and study the humanistic side of working from home. I have no problem with that. We're always striving in government to do things better, more efficiently, more effectively. I guess our charge was to take a look at our facilities and what could be done where. And I guess maybe you pointed that out. This is just the beginning.
Doug, I mean, could you, Chase, could you create a document, because I know you interviewed and spoke to everybody, who can work from home, who can't.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I understood was most departments have a body or two they could work from home. You know, usually they're support staff, they're not direct dealing with the public.
Correct.
But at the same time, you know, two and three people from each department does not reduce the space, is the problem. But nonetheless,
Absolutely understandable.
Doesn't mean you can't create that document showing every department, you know, they've got 30 people here, we believe this many people could work from home, and here's who they are and why, but why, and explain why the others could not.
Yeah.
Because then I think the question becomes, well, they can't because of the way we provide services, but then the question, well, can we change how we provide services? You know what I mean? Let's look at that a little more. I have no problem with that. We've gone down that road to some degree, but not as full as I think we could.
Okay. I'll be more than happy to do that.
You had the floor.
I'm so beg your pardon.
Yeah. No, you did. Go ahead.
Oh, I have the floor. Okay, good. So, yes, we need to do that. I don't advocate having people struggle to do their jobs because we're forcing them to do them in a way that doesn't work, okay? My object was to say, do we have the right amount of office space, and is it properly deployed, and possibly can we reduce the cost to the taxpayer by a building? And how would we go about doing that? That's an entirely different analysis than I think what we've gone through. What we've gone through is to say, here's what we have, we think we're using them appropriately, we don't recommend any changes. I guess my request was to say, is there not a way, given how many employees we have, how much work they have to do, how some of them might be able to do it from time to time elsewhere, is there not a way to relieve ourselves of a building that we pay for here at the county? That's my kind of overarching question. Now, the answer might be, geez, here's how you could do it. Your answer, Doug, might be, well, here's how you might do it, and here's the pros and cons of that. And then the Board of Commissioners get to say, oh, God, gee, we really don't like the idea of doing that. We don't want to close that building. And then we will have, in my view, done what I think the taxpayer wants us to do, which is to consider how we spend money. Or you might say, here's how you might relieve yourself of a building, and here's the pros and cons of that. And we say, yes, that sounds like a good idea, let's do it. But that's what I'm looking for, is for us to really go through a pretty involved analysis of what would be involved in saving our taxpayers the cost of a building somewhere in this county. Because that's the only way you save any money. You don't save any money by moving somebody from one floor to another, or moving one office from here to Elm Road, okay? You don't do that. The only way you save, it's the same way with saving money in Department of Corrections. You only save money by closing a prison, okay? So that's kind of what I was hoping we would have out of this analysis. And as I say, I think the analysis has only begun.
Okay. And through Mike's leadership and direction, we'll continue down that path with your permission.
You'll need my permission.
Well, what you've told me in conversation as well in your document here is that you don't believe we can reduce a building unless we buy another building and consolidate.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. What could be done, and I don't know if this is a
I could
road we want to go
interject.
down.
Go ahead, Commissioner Snell.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because I think this has some bearing. You know, we are in the people business. That's, people come to us, they have issues, they have things that need to be resolved, and they want somebody there. My wife works for the state, she worked from home, now she's on a hybrid plan, 3 days in, 2 days still working at home. She has a job that's pretty technical, and she's dealing with other governmental agencies. But still, they come into her office and need to talk to her face-to-face. I read your report, and I didn't see any room there for cutting down a building, moving out, unless, like you've already said, we combine and we either build or buy another one. I don't think that's what the people are looking for. But whether it's space or whether it's people, you know, we do a heck of a job with as few employees as we actually have. People think 800 is a lot of people, but for what we're charged to do, the things that we have to do, the people we have to meet, I don't think that can be cut. And if we're not gonna cut staff, and I'm not proposing that in any way, because I think we're at a what seems to be an optimal level of providing customer services effectively and efficiently, and and I read the same thing that Mike already read, there's no room here where we're gonna be able to close down a building without doing something else.
Just speak frankly, let's say that the North Lawn facility, front of the court, was closed down. It's almost 100 years old. It's a solid building. It's designed, the way that we utilize it minimizes the volatility between two angry divorced people and their kids. The philosophy is, how would we readdress front of the court? That becomes a challenge. Or would we even want to continue those services? And as stated in the report, front of the court was started in 1919 by state statute. Thinking that to achieve some of these things, we are talking about cutting services. Now, that's where the rubber meets the road as far as saving people money, is if we start cutting services. As far as people working from home, I don't believe that we're going to be able to, because of the nature of the business we're in, we are going to be able to achieve a real savings just by having people work from home. I really don't. Let me give you an example. The public defender's office was just remodeled. Been really nice facilities down there. They have a huge turnover in staff. They spend a lot of their time between the jail, Painter Road, and their own office. And they're so busy. Could we expect them to work from home? I don't think that would work. So, to get back to Earl's, could I go back and interview again each one and say, okay, here's where I'm really challenging you. You need to identify how your staff, how you as a supervisor, as a manager, can reduce your footprint of employees in an office space. Is there any possible way that you can, once again, have them work from home and effectively do their job? Is that correct?
Well, I think that's a much more narrow question than what I'm posing. What I'm posing is, how do we go about using fewer buildings to do the same amount of work as we do now? And that's, I think, a different question than what you just posed.
Okay.
There's a number of ways that might be accomplished, among them being folks working from home. It might be reducing the footprint of each individual employee. It might involve moving offices from one building. It would have to involve, if we're going to close a building, it would have to involve moving some office from this place to another place. But that's a much more broad analysis than what I think you just described. So that's the sort of thing I suppose I was hoping to see out of this study.
I looked at a building nearby that would combine this operation along with the courthouse. It was about, correct me, 125,000 square feet in that area. And I talked to the CEO, the owner of that building, the owner of the building, this representative. Looking at, could we do that? Problem that I was encountering is a lot of times, again, you had identified this building, or that building, was not built for the purpose of what we want. So we were going to have to go in, and while the technology corridors and conduits might be in place, we would still have to go in and spend a lot of money remodeling, bring it up to the requirements of government. In other words, we would have to create courtrooms. which is going to, and while Rick's team has talent, that is just a little bit beyond what they can do. They do a great job in maintaining what we have. But now we're bringing in contractors, we're bringing in materials, and now we're gonna spend more money, especially with the asking to build a new jail. I just was very conscious of that, trying to minimize exposure of increased tax bill. So I will be more than happy to, as Region 2's representative, go back and talk to each department head and find out, get a feeling, hey, how could we achieve more efficiencies, either by people working here or at home? I'll be more than happy to do that.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Bear had a question, I believe.
In order to close a building, renting another space, buying another space and renovating it is gonna be far more money than just maintaining what we've got.
I would agree.
And I don't think the budget report said we had 689 full-time employees. I don't think we're gonna work from home enough employees to close a building. So my thinking is, nice report, we're done. We're not gonna buy anything, we're not gonna rent anything else. Not affordable. We've got buildings that are paid for, they're being maintained well. I think we just stay with what we've got.
All right.
Yeah, within this report, I mean, I'm not seeing, and maybe I missed it, how much square footage out of all that square footage is not being utilized by the county.
Okay, here's one of the things that I encountered that was is records retention. Remember I referenced Gary's floor as 3,000 square feet. This is just an example. A lot of that floor is utilized by the original documents that have been created over, what, 150 years, Gary?
Yeah.
Hey, Gary.
So, what's that?
More than that.
So, here's what in talking to Amanda, we're taking up where people used to sit, are now going to records retention. So I took it a step further. I said, Amanda, how much are you trying to electronically put on microfiche? You know, and she said that's an ongoing process, and the way the court system is, it is actually, you keep losing ground because the courts are so busy. It's government's nature, it's a requirement. We have laws that pertain to records retention. Rick is challenged all the time in trying to find space that is environmentally friendly to that records retention. So in this building, he's finding every nook and cranny to try to find a place where he can keep vital records. The courthouse is probably even more challenged. Am I not right? Would you say that? So I guess the point is that we're trading office space, workspace, now for records retention. So that's also become a challenge for us.
So in the future, as we run out of space, we should be looking for a records retention facility and opening up space within the building for actual employees.
Well, I agree with you. What will end up happening is we're going to be focused on a new jail. My next thought is after we complete that jail, then as responsible leaders in our county, us, citizens.
Let the administrator chime in here if I could, please.
Frankly, what I'm ever hopeful for is that the state of Michigan will revisit the records retention policy.
Yeah.
We are nowhere near utilizing the technology that we can use for restoring or storing data and information.
And are we following the
Well, I believe
retention
we are.
schedules? We are.
We are.
Okay.
We're following
All right.
retention schedules. They rotate out. Some records you have to keep forever. But beyond that, they're behind, and that's normal. It's government. We're behind.
Yeah.
Even records that we scan, in many cases, we aren't allowed to get rid of the paper copy. Scanning makes it much more accessible to us, to the public, and it's a good thing to do. But it'd be nice to have that just backed up in a couple different vaults, you know, one in Antarctica and one in somewhere else, and get rid of the paper copy. You know, Deborah, as a court administrator years ago, had the darn courthouse burned down. And did you not lose most of your records? It's gone. If that had that scanned in the vault in Antarctica, we'd at least have a scanned copy. The state hasn't really got to that point yet. I know we're scanning like crazy. Jeff's office is scanning a bunch, as is Register of Deeds and the clerk. But again, the state has to change the legal records retention for us to really move some paper. And the Supreme Court, I believe, has a big role in that as well. I'm looking at Jeremy back there, District Court Administrator.
All right. We gotta really move along.
Yeah, I know you do. What is the direction for,
We'll talk more about that. The board here hasn't, I mean, we've got competing views on what we should or should not do. I suppose you guys can discuss and vote on that. That's how you feel, what you want to do. Accept or say, we accept what we have and we want to do more, you know, go back and put together some more information. I think we have some indication of what Commissioner Pileski is interested in. And some indication of what at least two other commissioners are. There's a few others I haven't heard from, but, Chair.
Yes, I thank you very much for your report, and we'll come together and discuss it as a board and give you direction. Thank you very much.
We'll talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That takes us to item 8, ARPA funding, District Court, continued landlord-tenant, full-time employee. Jeremy's here. Hello, Jeremy.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Almost afternoon.
Stand up, you're not.
I came to you in March of 2021, requesting some funding for a temporary position, but it's been using ARPA funds for specifically processing landlord-tenant case filings. At the time, the State Supreme Court had some administrative orders that suspended our current process of processing and handling landlord-tenants. That administrative order is still in play with really no vision in the future of when that may expire for the administrative order. And in fact, there is proposed language to change a court rule to include those current practices that were part of the administrative order as ongoing processes for handling landlord-tenants. When I spoke with you before, our crystal ball was really cloudy on how long this would go. I initially asked through the end of 2024, as ARPA funds could cover that position until then. Understandably, the board was concerned about having an ongoing position for that, and you approved it through the end of this year, 2023. Or 2022, I should say. I am requesting to have that extension, especially in light of the new court rules that are proposing to be included or to be updated. As talking with finance, this position could be funded through the end of 2024 using the ARPA funds and not coming out of any general dollar. Just as a quick reference, as I pointed out in here and when I talked before, our previous way of handling the court filings, we had about 20% that we actually touched of the average 6,000 to 7,000 landlord-tenant filings a year. Now we are touching every single one of those those cases multiple times and adjourning multiple times. And so just, it is an overload for the civil department to handle this, and that's the request for this additional position to extend through the end of 2024.
Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Barrow.
Okay, this is to continue funding for a civil clerk full-time employee
Mm-hmm.
through December 2024 using the ARPA funds. So once we reach the end of 2024, this approval of these ARPA funds is complete, is this person then terminated?
So that would be that if these rules end up continuing, that's then my conversation with the administrator's office, which then would be included in the budget that, similar to what you just saw, for the 2025 budget year. That if this process continues, there's no way our office can handle without having that additional position, that I would be then coming to you asking for general fund dollars for that.
Do you anticipate this process requiring this civil clerk way beyond 2024?
Well, people have until November 1st to put public comment on the proposed new language. So I can send that to the administrator's office if you want me to send that out to the link, because it's seriously, I gotta tell you, the current practice is not good for the landlords. It's very difficult for the landlords for being able to operate a business. That's my side.
So your long-range plan is to fund this for 2 years with
My
ARPA
desire for
money
long-range
and then
plan
fund it?
is that I don't have this administrative order or the court order rule that requires me to have this. I'm
Okay.
afraid that it's going to be, so long-term, if the current process maintains, then yes, I would be coming before as part of the normal budget process for
Okay.
2025 to request that for a position.
Thank you.
So it's accurate to say that the state Supreme Court has imposed new rules that have made it more difficult and imposed more steps for landlords to evict non-paying tenants.
Correct.
Thank you. And that could go forward as long as current Supreme Court maintains that view.
Correct, as with court rules. They create different court rules, take public comments, and then adopt or modify those court rules, at which time the courts are obligated to comply with it.
Commissioner Pileski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see a kind of a total cost here, but I'm guessing that you're probably talking about $100,000 or something north of $100,000. So my question of the administration would be, given that we have more plans for ARPA dollars than we have ARPA dollars, what would be supplanted were we to go along with the request the district court has made? We'd have to decide that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, correct. If I may.
It's not included, in other words, in our plan currently, is that right?
Correct.
All right.
I have that written down.
If I may, I was gonna ask Cecilia, where does this fall in the ARPA?
In the other category, under responding to the COVID pandemic because of the backlog of the court.
Okay. All right, so that's the money we have excess in.
Yes.
So, no, we're good. Because we have more Category A money than we can currently spend, that we have projects to spend. Because there's so many strings to it, we can't just spend it. So this would fit into that, we're in
Well,
good
that was
shape.
a good question to ask then.
Yeah.
And it right now is about $60,000 total comp for right now. So what
Other
else is
fringes and
2%?
stuff, I just rounded up.
Yeah, exactly, yep. So for the 2 years, probably around 125, given percentage increases and such.
All right, so it's a non-action item today. It'll go through the process. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Jeremy. Appreciate it. That will take us to item 9, facilities. I saw Derek and Rick here. Oh, hello, Rick.
Rick will get her started.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good
Morning. Talk about dirty water and stale air.
Appetizing.
fits right in. So, we have with us today Dick Williams and Ed Sepola from Verigy Energy. They have performed a preliminary audit of our facilities in terms of what's required for ventilation and cooling and heating, along with looking at our landfill as well. As we all know, our landfill is an ongoing expense. We're married to that thing till the cows come home. The problem is it's costing us over $90,000 a year, and the cost keeps going up to take that dirty water to a wastewater treatment plant and treating it. So initially, when I met with Dick, we talked about possibly putting in our own wastewater treatment plant and powering it with solar panels. We have 43 acres of nothing at this closed landfill. It would be perfect for using solar panels and then powering up a wastewater treatment plant that's prepackaged. When the water comes out of there, it's conditioned, it's ready to go. The issue that we've run into at the landfill now is it has a lot of nasty stuff in that dirty water. That's why we can't take it to the city. We have to haul it off towards Detroit to have it treated. The other issues that we're looking at too is how can we gain more energy efficiency with our buildings in terms of steam heat. We have a heck of a time trying to regulate that. I know this is a battle that a number of us have fought. It's either too hot or too cold. With the ventilation, it's an issue where when these buildings were built, their air conditioning was you opened up the windows. And nowadays, we've added air conditioning. A lot of it was done just on situational complaints. It's too hot in here, we need it cooler. Okay, we'll put another condenser in a split unit and not give much thought to bringing in outside air. So, as we've talked about in the past with ARPA money, a lot of it is in there specifically for health-type issues, which ventilation falls under. One of those tricky ones, because it doesn't cover heating, it only covers ventilation. So our biggest expense is just dealing with air conditioning. We have at the courthouse, gosh, I'm gonna guess at 50 condensers because there's no central cooling plant there. It was one of those areas where this judge is too hot, well, we'll put another condenser in and cool them off. This is all took place before I got here. We talked about it in the past with Honeywell when they came in and did the energy audit of putting in heating and cooling plants both at the courthouse and at the tower building so we could have some semblance of order. The Human Services building, when it was remodeled, uses heat pumps, and it also brings in the correct amount of outside air. The issue there is they didn't think about tempering hot, humid air coming into the building. So it be the middle of July, 90% humidity, 100 degrees outside, and it's sucking in that air into the building. So that's been a challenge too, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, don't we have to bring in 10% of outside air?
No.
Yeah. So it's something that needs to be addressed as well so we can comply with the ASHRAE requirements. So.
How much exhaust air volume does this building generate?
Building?
Well, any of these buildings, do we currently have heat exchangers with the hot, humid incoming air passes through basically a radiator, And what we are exhausting,
Right.
which is cooler air, looks like a radiator in a car. It
Yep.
it will cool the incoming air. Do we have that type of heat exchangers now?
Only in the human services building. And then it doesn't temper that outside air when it's coming in. It's just bringing it in.
Other than the human services building?
None of the others have that.
Is that part of the plan to evaluate that?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
You can't do it any other way, Tony. I mean, this is our one chance to get it right, I think. So, that's why I'm such a big proponent of this. If there are any other questions, I'd like to have Dick and Ed do their presentation.
Commissioner Bear.
This document that opened up here talks about the buildings, our various buildings, talks about our landfill. Does one proposal cover every bit of this, or can the landfill water treatment plant facility be separated out if we don't want that piece?
It could be. The way this letter of intent works, as long as we do one of the projects that they recommend, there's no cost to using the audit.
Okay, well, to dispose of the current leachate, we're paying $92,000 a year. To construct a new wastewater treatment facility, toxic waste facility, and operate it, what would be the cost of that per year? It's gotta be a lot more than $91,000.
We already have staff assigned to the landfill, so that's not an issue. We just have to have them trained to be wastewater treatment plant operators. So we don't have that to worry about. The other part is, we were talking between $900,000 to $1 million to put in this plant.
How much to create this plant and the solar panels to power it?
Well, we're looking at $900,000 to $1 million. Now, that in and of itself would pay for itself in 10 years.
That seems like a very low price.
Yeah.
I would have expected 10 times that.
Well, this is I'll let these guys do their
Gentlemen,
presentation.
let's get the presentation, and then we'll hit the questions at the end,
All right.
okay?
So,
All right.
further ado,
Thanks, Rick. Pleasure to be before the Board of Commissioners today. Thank you for your patience in allowing us to come before you. My name is Dick Williams. I grew up here in the city of Jackson. Was born and raised here, went to high school, graduated from here. So I was blessed to know what it's like to be a Jackson citizen. And it's good to be back here. Some of you may recognize me. I did do a project, I was blessed to do a project with the county back in 2012, 2013, when we did the initial phase of the energy project that we did. And we had a lot of success with that, and so this would be considered a phase two. I brought my team with me tonight, or today, Ed Soplala, he's a licensed professional engineer in the state of Michigan, and then Tyler Grant, he's also an engineer, but he's not registered yet in the state of Michigan. But anyway, I'd like to recognize Mike Overton, Rick Shealy, Derek Isley, Nikki, along with, Deborah and Cecilia for all the help that they gave us, because we've been working now for over a year, and we never could have gotten this study done without all the cooperation and all the reports and all the information that they gave us. So thank you to Mike, to you and your team for doing that. Today, I would like to make 3 key points. The first is that we've done our homework. Second is our solutions will work.
and third is it makes sense financially for the county. So as we go through that today, I'll take you through those three key points. The next page, please, Ken. So you see before, you want to hand out those, because some of this print might be kind of small, and I know you have it on your screens there, but they're going to pass out a copy of it so that if you want to make notes on anything, you can just make notes on it at that time. But the agenda that I prepared is these 10 things. The first three items are items that I'm going to go over, which involves the homework, and then items 4 through 6 are going to be, Ed's going to take you through those, and Tyler, which is more or less showing you how our solutions will work. And then 7, 8, and 9 are going to be why it makes sense financially for the county. Next page, please, Ken. This is kind of a roadmap of where we've been and how we got to where we are today. We started talking with Mike about this back in June last year, and then after having some follow-up meetings with Rick and Derek, in October, he authorized us through a memorandum of understanding to go through and do this feasibility study. The feasibility study was our investment into Jackson County. It didn't cost anything for the county for us to perform this. One of the things that it required them to do is do a limited letter of authorization, which allowed consumers to release all the energy bills to us for the last couple of years, so we had all the energy information. So we did get that information from consumers. Then once we got that, we put it into our energy utilization index, which you'll see shortly. And then we started doing our building site surveys in November 1st. One of the things that we do to learn and discover on how the existing building and the systems are operating in the building is we put in intelligence data gathering devices, which basically record temperature, record occupancy patterns, when buildings are occupied, when they're unoccupied, what the relative humidity is, when lights are on, when lights are off, when motors are on, when motors are off. And if we learn that, if we put that in for 30 days, then we can get all types of graph and empirical information to show us how the existing systems are operating. When my engineers have that, then they can do an analysis to see and discover how much the opportunity is to save energy by putting a new system in. So that was part of our feasibility, and we deployed those loggers on November 15th. After we finished going through all the site surveying and gathering the intelligence data gathering devices, we did financial alignment meetings. You'll see our self-funded model in May, because it's important for us that our project has to be a self-funded project. In other words, our savings each year has to offset what the debt service is. Because there's a law in Michigan that was passed in 2016 that wasn't there when we did the original project in 2012, which is called a tax-exempt leasing plan, Public Act 123, that requires that we have to have enough savings to offset the debt service each year, and you can do it up to 20 years. So we had to get that information to make sure that we could, offer a good project that would fund itself. But then we had some scope alignment meetings in February through April to make sure with Rick and Derek and Mike that we were putting the right scopes in that address the needs and the things that they saw. And, they're the guys who are in the trenches every day, and they're the ones that are working with it. How do you see this solution helping you? Is this are we on the right path? So we had those meetings, and then we had a draft of the report, which we showed Mike and Rick and Derek back in June. And from there, they decided that it was a good idea to present this, at least from the landfill opportunity, to Mr. Schneider, Jeff, and his team, along with all the Public Works Board members, and some of the commissioners were on that board as well. So we did that just a few weeks back. So that's what we've accomplished so far. If you turn to the next page, please. Thanks, Ken. This is why you might want to look on the handout that I gave you. this is the, energy utilization index, and it ranks all of your facilities, you know, from the least efficient all the way to the most efficient. They're listed there. And you can see what they're spending electric-wise, what they're spending gas-wise, and what the total energy dollars are. Altogether, this doesn't include the jail and the sheriff's building, because we were asked not to touch that because of the situation with the millage going on there. So without those buildings, you're spending just under $1 million, about $850,000 a year on your energy cost, and your average cost per kilowatt hour is 16 cents per kilowatt hour. So it told us that there is a pretty significant opportunity for us to help you. If you turn to the next page, please. One of the ways to identify how your building is operating as it compares to your peer buildings in like categories is Energy Star Buildings is a federal protocol for a national medium reference value. And you can see that, again, it takes your buildings from least efficient all the way down to most efficient. And if you just look at the first item, like, for example, county courthouse, it shows that there's 81,000 square feet in the building. The KBTU's conversion of the gas volume is 7,308,365. The electric volume KBTUs is 3,136,240. And then the total energy KBTUs is 10,444,605. That gives you a rank for your EUI for that building of 128.9. And if you stack that up to a peer building of this category for this type of building for a courthouse, your peers are 101. So the reason why that's shown in red is that shows you that, you know, that's an opportunity. That's your best opportunity to save energy is in that building. Yellow is, you can go through and do it on your own, but you can do each line item and see what it compares to. But yellow and red means there's significant opportunity for us to help you. Green means it's efficient. And if you look at, for instance, your event center that was recently built over at the fairgrounds, you can see that that's very efficient in comparison to its peers. So, good news is you did a good job of designing and how you're operating, and Rick with how he's operating that facility. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the brains of the outfit, my engineer, and he's going to walk you through, the solutions and how they're going to work.
Thank you, Dick. I don't know about the brains part of it, but I'm a professional engineer in Michigan. Been doing this specifically in construction for over 35 years. Been a design engineer for about 10 years, and in the construction and specifically energy projects like this for about 25 years. So I bring a lot of experience to the team here and also to the county. So I'm actually honored to be part of this project and excited to actually make this presentation. One facility or one site that was of high importance to Rick was for us to look at the landfill that you see there before you. And I'll just discuss it in high-level terms, not to get into too specifics unless you have specific questions. This is a existing landfill that has seepage leachate that is directed in 3 locations within the landfill. One is in the northwest quadrant pond/tank, and another one's located in the southwest quadrant, and the other one's on the east quadrant. The one in the northwest is the one that's highly toxic, has the least amount of flow, but it has the highest concentration. And then it starts to go from counterclockwise down in the southwest, less concentration, more flow, and on the east, that's very high flow, but it's less concentrated. What has happened over time, the EPA and
and the annual, required testing that's for this facility. An Eagle requirement is that they have to continually test the content and the chemical composition of all that leachate. And, over time, and probably in the past 10 years, they actually had to go from pond containment to sealed tank containment. Because at that time, the contaminants were getting to high toxicity. So now they're actually being held in a tank, and once the tanks get to a certain level, they actually have to be pumped and hauled away to a landfill in Detroit. And that's the current state that's been occurring for about 5 to 7 years. And the average cost of that is nearly $100,000. So we've identified a 2 or 3 year average around $91,000. And just from that specific analysis and looking further at possible solutions, there is a solution to actually get this done and actually contain it and do away with or at least minimize it to the point where we actually can handle the contaminants in a much more economical fashion.
Are the lagoons still full, or have you emptied them and they're now in the tanks?
No, the lagoons are now being decommissioned, and all the leachate are being collected in the tanks.
And it's continually collected because there's new leachate coming out?
Yes, they're continually collected until they reach a certain level, and that's being monitored by the operator, Jeff Ostrander. And once they get to a certain level, they have to be pumped out. And when they're pumped to a tanker, then they haul it away.
Thank you.
Commissioners, if I may, please jot down your questions that you have. We're going to ask them at the end so that we can get through the information.
Okay. What this slide does, and I'm going to continue with my presentation, is this is one existing condition that was presented to us. We evaluated it, and there is opportunity there, and I can get to that in the next slide. Next slide, please. Another item that we looked at and specifically targeted was the existing conditions, the aging HVAC that you have here at the county. One example is the Jackson Youth Center. Most, if not all, those rooftop units there are way beyond their useful life. 15 years expected life, and credit to Rick and Derek. And it was mentioned earlier how they maintain and service this equipment. Specifically, this one that I show there has been in service for 27 years. It's well beyond its useful life. But part of what we're analyzing is not only just the age of the facility, but really understanding the use of the facility. This being a youth center, operates 24 hours a day. It is an integral part of county services. So it's an item that we're bringing to the administration, that an item like this, there has to be proactive action to address situations like this, or you're going to have catastrophic failure. Next slide, please. As Dick mentioned, this is just an example of these existing operating data gathering devices that we put out there. What it is it just sticks up and it measures specific data, humidity, temperature, light levels, and there's two reasons why we do this. One of them is really to understand how you operate your facility. Talk about buildings that are either hot or cold, or humidity is low or high. Unless we really understand how they operate over the next, and these are out there for 30 days, we really don't understand how we can get our arms around to address, is there a better way to do it? Are we overheating? Are we overcooling? Is an area overlit? Are we leaving lights on when they should be off? These devices will tell us that. The second reason why we do this is that when I do an energy analysis, this is the basis of my energy savings. This tells me, the lights are on so much, and I know that they should be off when there's no occupants. There's an opportunity for me to save just in the delta that then they should be off. It's not a matter of guesswork. It's a matter of trying to understand the empirical data and applying it to the savings. Slide, please. This is kind of a busy slide, but what this is just a scope matrix with the buildings listed there on the left column, and on the top is the opportunities for us to do energy conservation measures. And I'll just read them quickly, and the next slide we'll talk about in specifics. There's an LED technology upgrade that we intend to do. Rick and his staff and Derek, they're in the process of doing an LED, a countywide LED technology upgrade through the Consumers Energy Program. And we're going to let them continue with that. We're going to address the airport and the parks. There is a significant opportunity to do solar installation, taking advantage of net metering that Consumers Energy is made available to all their consumers. If anyone's really familiar with net metering, what that is really the best of both worlds, to actually capitalize on producing energy and actually consuming energy, buying energy from consumers' energy at the same rate. So if you guys are paying 15 cents a kWh, when you don't use solar, you can sell it back at that same rate. So it's the whole idea is to stay within that program, take advantage of net metering, and maximize solar capabilities that you guys can achieve. Now, what Consumers does, they do cap it at 150 kW. So our idea is to meet or exceed that if the building load allows it to. And in some cases where we exceed that, we're gonna not take advantage of net metering, but we're actually going to base load the building. And if we can use all the energy that the sun can provide, that means we don't really have to sell any back. And that's where it's a key aspect of capitalizing on solar energy. I'll go through each one of these fairly quickly. One major item that I want to talk about is the master plan renovation, and I'll touch on it with regards to this specific building and also the courthouse. I know that the original study I talked about, first of all, it's an older building, and as Rick has alluded, it went through iterations of cooling or HVAC upgrades over the last 20 years. And what's evident is that it's kind of in a hodgepodge, piecemeal type scenario. In any situation like that, what happens is that the building and the way it operates, it's very inefficient. It's reflective of the utility information that was shown earlier as being in red. And not only that it's like that, but it's highly it's reflective of how they maintain the facility. It's very difficult in working with Derek that they have to maintain many different types of HVAC systems, and I think it was mentioned at the courthouse, there's almost 50 air conditioning units on the roof and on the ground. And from the standpoint of a centralized type system, you can't take advantage of being able to master plan a system. What we intend to do for this specific building is to create a master plan, move forward program for them. There's several floors on this building that require, they're already at its end of its useful life. What the county would typically do in a situation like that is just replace it for whatever's available or whatever's needed. The intent is that we create a master plan that's going to be cohesive for the entire building. So fast forward in 10 or 15 years, it'll be all consistent, one master planned facility. Same with the courthouse. Courthouse is a little bit more challenging because it's an operating courthouse, very active, many different departments within there, so the HVAC system that we have planned for there is appropriate for a retrofit. system that will work within a functioning facility. And we can get into that a little bit later. We've got some sketches that show that. There's boiler replacements we're doing throughout the entire county. I talked about the wastewater treatment plant. And there's one opportunity that we're working with Rick and the administrators is the ability to capitalize on EV charging stations in certain areas of the county. What we intend to do is and again, working with the county where it makes sense to put in electric vehicle charging stations, point of use, and coupled with the solar projects that we're putting in, and really get to the county in a position to migrate towards EV, electrifying their vehicles and for their systems. Next slide, please. Now, this is just a description of the ECMs. I won't go through them. You could read them at your leisure in advance. Proposed measures at the Felton landfill. What we intend to do here is at the southwest or southeast quadrant of the landfill is we intend to put in the new wastewater treatment plant. The way we're going to do that is to pump the leachate. We're going to put a new pumping system that goes from the northwest down to the southwest, and then eventually make it to the east, pumping all that leachate to one holding tank that's there now. It's actually large enough to handle all that leachate. We will treat that there with a new barn facility that's going to be heated, that's going to have a reverse osmosis system. It's going to be a triple pass. Our preliminary studies show that we can do this with a triple pass reverse osmosis system that get us down to about 97% leachate-free or PFAS-free. What we're intend to do with that remaining water, that 97%, is to put it in the adjacent pond that's there, and we're going to hold it, and it's going to be tested on an annual basis to be released into the local area there. The other 3% are preliminary indications that we're going to be able to treat that with carbonized activated filters or other means so we can handle it and dispose of it in a legal manner. The preferred is to do it locally, but it's something where the operator can put in his pickup truck and haul away. The other aspect of this solution is that we want it, our target is to get this facility as close as we can to be net zero, to produce solar power to power the facility, and to really operate during the daytime where we have solar. But in cases where we don't have it, we'll have battery backup, provide electricity that we need year-round. Next slide, please. The other aspect of this project is, and this is just for examples, is to our original thoughts that we could put solar arrays on the roofs of many of these facilities, with exception to the youth and also the airport. There is land in adjacent areas which we'll vet out with regards to exactly how we're going to do it, where we're going to run the conduit. But our preliminary thoughts is that, and our preliminary engineering is that we have the capability at the courthouse there, whether or not it's going to be on the roof or specifically, we may even have parking lot structures in the adjacent parking. But we have a 150 kW possibility there at the Human Services, another 150 kW, again, staying in the 150 kW net metering program within that containment of 150. At the Event Center, we're going to max out there at 45, or that's 90, 245 kW solar arrays. And at the youth center, we're looking at close to 160 kW there. That's close to 150, and we're gonna max that also. There's some other facilities not shown there, but that's still under analysis. Next slide, please. I'm gonna introduce now, Tyler Grant. He helped me put together these sketches, and we'll talk specifically more about,
Thank you. That said, I more recently joined the Verigy team here at the beginning of the year, but prior to that, I've been an engineer in the construction industry for coming up on 7 years. He started to talk a little bit about this building specifically as it relates to the master planning. If you look at A there, you'll see hot water and condenser water risers. Those will span the entire length of the building, every floor, and will be an integral part of tying in the HVAC replacements as they become, necessary when each piece of the existing equipment reaches the end of its useful life. So B kind of demonstrates an overview of what, one of those entire floors may look like. Composed of the packaged air conditioning unit that you see there at C, bringing in fresh air and conditioning it as it moves into the spaces, and then that will be dispersed through the variable air volume boxes with reheat. To provide the cooling, there will be a cooling plant down on top of the 5th floor, as well as a new boiler plant added to supply the hot water for the heating. The building would also feature the F in the bottom left corner as the building automation, a new front-end control system to tie in automation and controls for all the systems. If you flip to the next slide, another one he mentioned was the county courthouse. That would feature a solar array on the roof, a VRF system on the, as well, rooftop units, which would then supply cassettes down on each floor. Each floor would have its own dedicated outdoor air system, DOAD system, which, as Commissioner Bear inquired about, would feature an economizer on there to condition that air as it comes into the space using the exhaust air and heat exchangers. The spaces would also be controlled there with branch controllers, E for each floor. That would allow for simultaneous heating and cooling based on the space or zone's requirement. F, as Ed mentioned, in the bottom right-hand corner there is the EV charging station. H would be a new boiler replacement, as well as G would be, again, the building automation, integration, and intelligence upgrade. Thank you, and I will turn it back over to Dick.
Thanks, Tyler. Next page, please, Ken. So one of the things we do as part of this is we always look at how can we help fund the project. So the first thing we looked at was the tax-exempt leasing plan, which was Public Act 123, passed in 2016. That allows you to do a lease back of all the improvements up to a 20-year period. And the nice thing about utilizing this, and the reason why the legislature passed this, is they recognized that it was an efficiency measure to allow municipalities to basically get savings to pay for the project without increasing their indebtedness. So this doesn't really count as a debt on your balance sheet. This is actually your financial advisors and your auditors, they recognize this through this act, that this, because there's going to be savings from your existing budget that offsets this, and these savings are going to be guaranteed by my company each year, that therefore it doesn't count as a debt. That way you save your bonding capacity for other more, urgent projects or projects that are nearer or dearer to you. So that's a nice and innovative thing that's different from when I did the first phase back in 2012, because this wasn't available back then. The next thing is, we worked with Cecilia on the Class A ARPA money that you had, which you had already had in the county's project listed for things that you wanted to do. So some of that money would help fund this project. And the last two bullets are there was just, about 2 weeks ago, the Inflation Reduction Act passed, and in there, we didn't even contemplate this. This is something that just new came out, but because we're doing solar, in the past, local governments could not get, an investment tax credit because you don't pay taxes. So what the federal government did with this act is they're gonna allow you to get up to a 50% tax credit or principal forgiveness off that project because you're putting in renewable energy and solar. The only way you're gonna get the 50% is you have to have at least a megawatt, and you might achieve a megawatt with aggregating all your buildings together, and we don't know because they haven't released the rules yet as far as how that's gonna be, but you're gonna be right about a megawatt with all the solar that we have. You know, if they allow it to aggregate, you could get 50% off the price of it. If not, you'll at least get 30%. So, you know, if our solar is about, say, $2.5, $3 million, you're potentially, you know, you're looking at about $1 million of, and that's not even in this financial analysis, but we'll put you in for that grant. That's part of what we do. You know, as the rules get released, you know, and that comes available, we'll do that for you. So, next slide, please. This is the self-funding model. So what we do is we look at the current expenditures that the county has in your budgets, and we get all those budget information. We got that from Rick and, you know, from Nikki to help us get all these figures. So you see in front of you, there's basically 4 columns. The first column is the cost center and what it's called. The second column is the current expenditure within that cost center. And then the third column is what, with that scope of work that my engineers just talked to you about, implemented, that would be what it would drop down to, the third column. The difference between the second column and the third column is your funding stream or your savings that we would be using to help fund this project. So you look at the bottom, just over $500,000 that we'll be able to guarantee to help you get these improvements done for your facility. Next slide, please, Ken. So what does that mean in a summary fashion? Well, over the next 20 years, you know, that's your total payments are going to be just under $10 million. Your total savings, assuming a 3.22% inflation factor. Now, although we're in a high inflation right now, we don't think it's responsible for us to use like the 11% inflation that we're at right now in our calculations. What we're doing is we're using the last 100 years of inflation per the National Bureau of Standards at 3.22%. So that's what we're using, you know, to inflate the numbers, but the savings is just over $14 million, and the difference is you'll be, not only will you get all these new improvements, you'll actually be $4 million ahead, almost $4.2 million ahead of where you would be if you just continue to operate as you're operating now. Next slide, please. So this is the cash flow. This kind of that was the summary, the last page. This kind of gets into the details. The inputs are on the left, and then you see that there's basically, you know, 5 major columns: the year, the annual payment, the savings, both energy and operational, and what they total to, and then the annual net cash flow, which is the difference between the savings and the payment, and then cumulatively what that means as it adds up each year. So if you look at year 0, it's showing that there's 0 payment because this project is going to take about 1.5 years to implement, and you wouldn't have to start paying until everything's installed and accepted, which is going to be 2024. So you would, the first year, you'd be able to get some of those savings coming in because we're going to be getting, you know, rolling with getting stuff in, like the solar and kind of that stuff, so you can get online with your savings right away, and that would be considered construction savings. After that, from years 1 through 20, it's basically simple math. You can see that your payment each year is the same, it's $593, and then your energy and operational savings are pretty much, you know, what they're listed at there. They're just going up 3.22%. per year, and then they add up to the bottom to the $14,399,748. And then the difference between that and your cost is about almost a $4.2 million, net, where you're gonna actually be saving over and above that amount. On the left, it has the input factors that we're saying that the project is costing around, that we think this is gonna cost about $10 million. You're gonna use the plan money that you had for your ARPA, which was the Category A ARPA money for the ventilation systems that we're replacing of $3,295,000. That buys this down to the financed amount that would be $6,705,000, and that would be financed over the 20 years, and that's how you're getting that payment of, $493,366. And then, the first year energy savings at $234,264, and then your operational savings, which are listed out in the next category there, total $267,517. Together, that represents the savings, and this is the model of what the amortization would be for the debt over that term. Next page, please. So the benefits that we see for this project is, this is a proactive way for you to manage your assets instead of being a reactive way. It helps you do this proactively, and it helps you utilize energy savings and operational savings to fund the project. It gives you also a way to upgrade the Dalton landfill to get, that leachate problem, it's costing almost $100,000 a year. Why not use that money? Some of the stuff I heard earlier was trying to be fiscally responsible for your constituents and citizens. This is a fiscally responsible way for you, instead of to keep paying that money, why not use that money so that you can hang on to that money yourself? And then after it's paid for, you just continually get that extra money that keeps coming in every year, because after 20 years, you actually own all this equipment. Environmentally responsible and fiscally responsible. So yeah, you're getting things like a net zero operation at the landfill. You're getting solar at all of your facilities. You're not having to buy as much energy. You're not emitting as much carbons into the atmosphere. Most of you, if you've been watching the weather, there's been a lot of things. Floods over here, droughts over here. Europe's got a drought situation. It's because carbon dioxide's going up into the atmosphere. You're doing your part by being, environmentally responsible with this implementation of this program. You're getting better maintenance for the county infrastructure, because it's rather than waiting for something to break down and then deal with it after it breaks down, you're actually proactively dealing with it and then, moving ahead, moving it to the next level of technology. And then this does promote economic development, because what we would do at this next step is we have to finish the design and engineering, and then we have to bid out the projects to equipment suppliers and contractors. And then whenever we do that, we try to utilize local contractors and equipment suppliers as much as possible to keep as much of the dollars local as possible. So that would be the benefits. Next slide, please. And the proposed schedule is, we're here today. We understand that the next meeting, should your body elect to move this forward to the next cycle, would be the General Government Standing Committee on the 12th. And then after that, there would be the Board of Commissioners on September 20th. And then that would be where they would finally authorize us to do the letter of intent to move forward with the detailed engineering and design, which we would do September through November. And the project bidding would take place from November through December. And that contract would come back to your Board of Commissioners for authorization in December, and start construction in January and finish in May of 2024. And that's kind of the event schedule that we see at this point. So that concludes our presentation. I've been blessed in 43 years I've been doing this, I've been blessed to do many, many projects in Michigan, and one here in Jackson County. This will be a second phase for, over $300 million in projects like this. We certainly are very excited to help the county with this project and move this forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We do have, I know some commissioners got some questions. I'll start with Commissioner Snell.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation, and it's brought a lot of thought and questions to my mind here. So the first thing, and it was stated pretty plainly that we could sell back excess energy to consumers. So is that just commercial and industrial users? Because I know a couple homeowners that they get a credit up to what their bill would have been,
Right.
but they don't get to sell any excess to consumers.
Yeah, you're basically, that's how it's doing. They're basically doing a true-up of the bill, so your meter would spin backwards when you're not using the energy that it's creating, and then but you're selling it back at the same cost that they're charging, net metering, which if you become a power producer, you could only sell it back at like 3 or 4 cents a kilowatt hour rather than the 16 cents that you're being charged by consumers. So from an economic standpoint, it's a better thing. And I'm not sure on the residential side, because we don't do residential, but on the commercial side, it is allowed to do to consumers.
So I'm kind of all over here, but I want to talk about the leachate at the facility. So, it was said it would, after it's all taken care of, it goes into the pond, and then it goes into a local area release. What does that mean?
Basically, it's water that's safe to be released to the local area. Again, that's gonna be tested.
But what is the local area?
The ground.
So you're gonna go right there?
The ground, yeah.
Now, is it being pumped in, or is it just allowed to percolate in?
It's just allowed to percolate in. We have to release it at what's regulated.
Surface
That's the reason we have to
discharge.
hold it. We can't just discharge it.
Okay. So that leads to my last question on the leachate, so we've done all this process, we've done the reverse osmosis. The contaminants have got to go somewhere. Where are those going?
The last part of it, which is that last 3%, we're either gonna take care of it through activated charcoal. It's gonna be housed in barrels. It's something that we're gonna be able to handle. The local operator will be able to handle it and dispose of it locally.
Okay, so disposal, that's what I'm not worried about, but there's a cost to disposal.
Yes.
So that's got to be talked about as a cost for the system. And then, of course, I'm looking at your numbers. It said that we're going to pay $6,000 for a month. Or is that an annual
That's an
cost?
annual, that would be what.
Annual cost for the prepackaged system, wastewater treatment plant.
That would be the leftover, $6,000 would be what's left over and what you're spending now to get rid of that contaminant. What has to be determined, in the rest of our engineering and analysis, is will your local wastewater treatment plant take that and dispose of it then in their plant because it's been processed, or will you still have to continue to take it to Detroit's wastewater plant? So that's what has to be determined.
Okay.
But we projected it's gonna be about a $6,000. You're gonna bring your expense from about $91,000 to $6,000. And that $85,000.
So does that $6,000 include the disposal of the contaminants that
Yes.
you just talked about?
That's what we're projecting.
So that would be included in that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then, and really, this is quite a, undertaking. And I see a lot of positives on this, saving taxpayer money, being energy cognizant. We won't get into the debate about CO2 or not, but, I'm looking at your last number, or some of the last numbers you talked about. Available operational funds, you're saying that we're gonna have 500,000. That's on page 16.
Yes.
And I'm looking at, page 16, page 18. So it's gonna cost us $493 that first year to get a savings of 51,000, or 501,000.
Yep.
For a cash flow 8414. So where's the rest of the 500?
I'm not sure what, let me see that.
So you're telling me we're gonna get $500,000 more a year
Right, that's the
for
savings.
available operation funds.
Yep.
But the first year, I'm gonna pay $493 to get to 500.
Right.
Gonna keep
So it
paying.
self-funds itself through the savings. The differential is $8,000 the first year. And so you're basically, what you're saying is, I would rather spend this money this way and get all these new improvements than rather pay the utility company and the contractors like I'm paying now reactively. You're turning proactively to put all this new stuff in, and you're using savings,
Right.
and those savings are what we guarantee.
Well, and I understand that, but you see what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure what you're
I got-
asking. What I'm looking at is the 493 is our debt service. And then he's saying we're gonna save more than that, so we have a net.
By 8,000, we're gonna save $8,000.
$8,000 that year.
Okay.
We come out to the good.
So I would, to me, the 500,000 isn't available operational funds. Over 20 years, we'll have a net savings of $4 million. Right, between what we.
A little bit every year.
A little bit every year. So if I take $4 million, okay, all right.
Yeah, so you're gonna be ahead of the game by doing this, and you're gonna have facilities that are better. And one of the things that wasn't mentioned that we are putting in as a control system, we actually manufacture, we have a software-based platform that's called Orchestrate, that basically is like the reason why we named it that, it's like a conductor to conduct all the buildings and all the HVAC together from all these different languages from the systems that you already have. But you'll have the ability that, should you go through with some of these people working from home that was talked about earlier, and some of these buildings become less occupied, we can put carbon dioxide sensors in the spaces so that as less people are in there, then you don't have to bring in as much fresh air, and it's the fresh air that you have to either heat up or cool down that costs you the money. So that type of intelligence can be entered into your building automation system once this software platform is put in. So that, there hasn't been any savings, calculated for that. That's another thing. And then the other thing is, if we get the Inflation Reduction Act on the solar, that'll probably be about another $1 million to add to the $4 million, so that it could be as high as a $5 million savings.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Williams.
Thank you. So, I have a pretty long list of questions, but what I'm gonna do, just for the sake of time, since we are coming back on next week, I'll ask a lot of my questions then, but just for today, in terms of the lighting, you talked a little bit, or electricity, you talked a lot about that. When we looked at the various buildings locations, did you do a determination on how many LED light bulbs we had versus incandescent? Was there any of that type of study at all?
We did it for the buildings at the airport and the parks, because that's the ones that we're responsible for. Rick Shealy is already in the process. They already bought a whole bunch of LED bulbs that basically we're providing from Consumers Energy, and they're in the process of converting them out right now.
Okay.
So we aren't doing any lighting projects, and with the exception of the airport and the parks, because he wasn't doing those, so he asked us to do those. So he's already in the process of doing that, so I'm sure he already did that inventory and all that.
Okay, so in that inventory, did you notice if any of those lights had like sensors on them, you know, when you walk out of a room, they'll go off and come back on. Was any of that pulled into account as well?
Just in some areas, when we put in those intelligent gathering devices, it told us in some of these areas where there was opportunity to put those occupancy sensors in,
Okay.
They weren't present. So in areas where it does make sense, we would be installing those.
Okay. And then you mentioned the total cost was $10 million, right?
That's what we're projecting right now, yeah.
Okay. And then lastly, we have some projects that we've already started using ARPA dollars in terms of some updates on systems, AV, et cetera. Has that, I don't know if you have access to that, but was that list compared to what you're already planning to do?
Yes.
Okay.
The county provided us that list of the ARPA projects, and of the ARPA projects that you already had money in there, there was different categories, A, B, C, and the A ones were the ones that needed to be done right away and needed to be done. And so any of those ventilation projects that our project is addressing the ventilation, we met with Cecilia. She gave us the authorization to have those projects be included in this project. So of the 10 million, there was 3.2 million of that was already under the ARPA funds that you were gonna do anyway.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll save the rest for later. Thank you. Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Gillette?
Thank you, and following Commissioner Williams' example, I'll just note the questions I will have next week at General Government. One will relate to the EV charging and what mechanism for earning fees. It seems to me you don't give away fuel.
Yes.
And so there should be a fee recognition somehow for us. The next will be how the savings computation will be proven each year. I can see the anticipated energy savings, but the anticipated operational savings look a little soft to me. And how do we go about proving that we actually have achieved those and building it into the contract?
Right.
That they must be proven annually, okay? For example, the capital cost avoidance, I'm not sure what that means. So I'll be looking for that sort of an answer next week, too.
Sure.
Thank you.
He asked two of my questions, and piggybacking off that on the guarantee is, I see a lot of use of solar panels, which, you know, it's the future and not against it, but I do have some questions on that. The life expectancy of them, should one fail prior to the debt service being completed, is there a warranty on them, or?
25-year warranty, those would be replaced over the 20 years of the debt. Anytime during the warranty, that would happen. The projected life is somewhere between 30 to 35 years.
Okay, and then when it does occur and we dispose of them, where do they go and what's the current cost of profit of that?
So, in the solar industry, there's a movement towards, just like we have the returnable cans and bottles here in Michigan, that they're gonna start building in the cost of doing that so that they can be refurbished and recycled.
Okay.
So, that's what's gonna be happening, is we're gonna be dealing with a vendor that gives the recycle, so it can be recycled with that vendor.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I know Commissioner Bear had questions. Did you, Commissioner Williams?
Yes. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
The electrical vehicle charging systems, everything I've had sent to my house, even from consumers, offering me if I want to put their electrical vehicle charging station in my house. They will install the $10,000 charging station for $6,000, and I get $4,000 for free. Nothing's free. It just that cost gets passed on to somebody else. Free is a bogus term there. It just means somebody else is paying it on your behalf. So if there's electric charging stations built into this, I want the people charged the absolute top price for what they're getting.
We would have a credit card reader in there so that if they hook up, that you would get the revenue, the county would get the revenue from using that
Yes, but are we gonna sell that, solar surplus through the vehicle charging stations at a low price?
That's
To me, it's gotta be
that's for you
absolutely to
guys
cover our
to-
costs.
Yeah, and for you as a commission, that you can decide at what rate you wanna charge your residents at. That's something that's up to you.
Solar
That's
panel-
not- By the way, that's not in any of our numbers.
No.
In other words, whatever revenues you can get out of that, that'll just be frosting on the cake, that's not in any numbers.
Okay. The solar panel recycling, how far away is that? 'Cause everything I read now says, they can't be recycled.
From the articles I've read is that there actually is a company that's doing it right now here in the United States, but it's something it's a movement that they're advocating towards to get everybody to wanna do this. And like that recycling thing with the bottles, they don't want the same thing, they don't want all that stuff to end up in the landfill. And a lot of those first generation solar panels are now coming to the end of their life, so now they're finally starting to wake up and realize, hey, we gotta do something about it. So that's what I've read on it.
Okay. Page 18, want to clarify a number you said, want to make sure it's in my hearing. All of the annual payments, that's $493.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I heard you say $593. Was that my hearing?
Yeah.
You heard $593?
$493.
Okay. Thank you for that. In 20 years, we own this equipment. What's the life expectancy of all this equipment?
Most of your HVAC, because it will be a built-up system rather than, units that are outside, is gonna be somewhere between 20 to 30 year life. Your boiler life is typically 30 years. Your air handlers, and pumps life, it's typically somewhere between 20 to 25 years as rated by ASHRAE, American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. So everything that you're financing, life will be 20 years or greater. Solar panels are 30 to 35 years.
Okay. All right, my thought being that when we get to the point that we own this stuff, it's gonna be probably 2/3 or greater towards its life expectancy. So we may need to have to do some planning to buy some of these things ahead of time, so all of a sudden, just like we do with the sheriff's patrol cars. We plan on buying a few every year instead of 20 of them in 1 year. We can't get into a situation where we gotta replace a big majority of these in 1 year. So that's for our planning. Page 20, detailed engineering and design. It can be done in 2.5 months? That's amazing. You're serious about that? This number's correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, we've already started that already. I've spent maybe 4 to 5 months already in your facilities, doing a lot of preliminary, investigations. Really, what we've done up to this point is really, without any authorization at our risk to make the investment in the county. So to answer your question, yeah, we have a lot of work to do. Not only have to engineer it, but we also have to bid it.
Yeah, that's a tight time period.
Yes.
I want to make sure I had that number right. That's all the
We've got,
questions.
just so you know, we've got over 70 engineers. These aren't only the two in our company, right down, like, we're out of the Royal Oak office of 3, but we have a whole team of engineers in our Columbus office, and we have an office in Indianapolis.
I imagine some of this is just cookie cutter from
Right.
previous projects.
Yeah, and our solar engineering group is actually out of Phoenix. And they've supported me up to this point.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, I appreciate it. We'll see you next week, probably, it sounds like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Walls, geez, I asked once before.
Oh,
For me to understand correctly, you had talked about the reverse osmosis system and the leach it, and you was gonna run that through 3 times?
Yes.
Leach it,
3-pass system.
3 passes, and the remaining time through, it would go to the wastewater treatment plant to be,
97% of it will be of condition that we could actually put in a retention pond that's there now. Hold it, and then it'll, based on our calculations, through the EPA requirements, is that we're able to bleed that out over time. But that'll be safe to be released. The other 3%, we're going to, our preliminary calculations, is that we're going to handle that through activated charcoal in barrels.
obviously, you've done the testing on the leach it to know what its content is, and whether or not,
Fishback tests that now annually.
You have an engineering firm that does that every year for you.
and you know the particulate
Yes.
composition of it, and what its makeup is, will it break down the reverse osmosis membranes?
Yes. No, I mean, they have to, reverse osmosis membrane is basically very sophisticated, filtration system.
I understand.
And then once it reaches a certain, level of usage, basically, the pressure starts to build up.
Yes.
The operator will just have to replace them, maintain them. So there is a maintenance that's required to it.
Right, and I understand the process. Will you be doing, positive or negative ion treatment to it as well after it's finally done?
Right now, what we're calculating is that the reverse osmosis will take care of everything that we need. Now, we may do something on the back end with in conjunction of the activated charcoal, but that's some of the final engineering.
Okay. When we switch back to the buildings here a little bit, you're gonna be replacing the chillers and the boilers as well?
Here at the tower, you don't have a main centralized chiller system. Everything is decentralized.
Right.
Every room, every floor has its own specific rooftop unit, condensing units, same with the courthouse.
Will you continue that same process? According to your graph, you showed a standpipe system that went up through all 17 floors with the chillers or cooling towers on the top of the 5th floor. Is that gonna be consistent with your
Yes, what Tyler had shown, that's a centralized system, centralized chiller plant. And that'll have the ability to start to, ramp up as we start to modify, or as the county starts to modify each floor. The basis of that is to really, master plan this building moving forward. What you have now is just a menagerie of different types of systems.
I understand that, yes.
So what we would be doing is we'd be building the pipe chase up every floor for, hot water piping, chilled water piping, and then you would eventually have to build out an air handler room on each floor for the central air handler that would, basically go probably replace where, probably suck in there where the windows are now. And then that would be your outdoor air into the facility. But right now, we're only including 2 floors, the 2 floors that really need it, because the systems in there, there's 1 floor that doesn't have air conditioning, and the other floor that their systems are malfunctioned and they need to be replaced. But then, once you have that backbone in place, because you've got other units that were just replaced, it doesn't make sense to rip out those units when they still have life on those but when they do get to the end of their life, then you simply have to put that same concept, that same master plan in for each floor.
Are you planning a 2-pipe system or a 4-pipe system?
Talking about the chill water, or are you talking about?
Both.
Both. It's 4-pipe.
4-pipe.
4-pipe. We had, hot water, climate return, and chill water.
And then the boilers you're planning on using, are they condensing boilers, or?
Our intention is that we're gonna convert it over to hot water, it'll be condensing boilers. Condensing boilers, correct, which will achieve anywhere from 95 to 97% efficient.
Thank you.
very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Need a motion to forward this?
We don't, to follow the path.
Okay, it just says motion requested on the letter from Mike. Okay.
Let me take a look.
No.
Ultimately, it'll go, we'll go study session, committee, full board. So we just leave the motion on there.
Now, this was for comments and information today. I just verified it, Tony. Tight. So we're all set. It'll come to, committee, and then we'll go around it, at the typical board meeting. That takes us to item 10, letter A, non-attorney magistrate, district court.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
I can say that?
Yeah, you're close.
Almost.
So, a couple months ago, I came to you for our attorney magistrate. That is a specific FTE that handles, the informal traffic, small claims, weddings. As the court administrator, part of the job description for that is to serve as a backup magistrate. I'm a non-attorney. I have no desire to have a law degree. So the state has what's called a non-attorney magistrate component. I then would serve as a backup to the magistrate to help in some of those areas. I am recently a now county resident. I think I'm in your district, Commissioner Kennedy now. And so that then makes me eligible as an elector in the county of Jackson to be eligible for this. And so I'm bringing this to you. I am asking for action with this. The issue with this is, as we've went through before, the chief judge submits a local administrative order to SCAO with then the commissioner's confirmation of that appointment. He has submitted that earlier this last week, and so this is coming before you for that that appointment and the approval of Chief Judge Goostree's appointment.
Commissioners, do we have any questions?
What does a non-attorney magistrate do?
So, some of the similar components, I would serve as the backup to the magistrate, doing informal traffic matters. So if you're fighting a ticket, you go before. There's additional training that then I go through SCAO because I'm not an attorney, to assist with that, to help with weddings, to mutual claim hearings.
Okay.
Any other questions? I have one if no one else does. Okay. Jeremy, has this position ever existed in our court system here?
Yeah, great question. The previous two court administrators served in that capacity as well.
Are you positive on that? Tammy served in that capacity?
Yep, she was a non-attorney magistrate. I had to submit.
I never knew that. Do you know that?
Yeah, that happened, it came before the court, I think probably before you were here.
Oh, yeah. I've only been there 11 years.
This was, I had to submit a local administrative order to rescind that, and she retired. And then Mike Dillon was the previous one.
I believe you. I would just ask administration if we could get verification on that, so all the commissioners can see that.
So if I read something that said she was not.
Yeah, we didn't think she was.
Yeah. That's what we'll find out by Monday.
Yep.
Next question is there an additional labor cost increase that'll be incurred from doing this?
Nope, it's part of the FTE, the job component already.
Okay, those are my only two questions.
Jeremy, can you just send me the LAO that'll come?
Yep, I will send that, yep.
Go ahead, Administrator.
I was just gonna ask, I never knew Tammy functioned in that capacity. Did she do what you're proposing?
Yeah, so when the majority is the informal traffic, that is the large aspect, and then the weddings. She didn't do a lot of the small claim stuff, but I do know that she filled in for the weddings, and then especially our online traffic, program. She would handle that when the magistrate was off on vacation, because most people want to make sure that they can handle their traffic compliance.
Thank you.
All right, great. This will be going forward to committee and then, forward to the full board, Tuesday night. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Yep. Now, that takes us, yes,
Could I back up
sure.
a little bit? Mike, your cover letter relative to the Verigy investment grade energy audit, item Roman numeral 3, analysis D, timing. Personnel and Finance Committee has to approve this motion to accept the proposal. Is that the wording you want in there?
Where are you at? I'm sorry.
I backed
Yeah, I
up.
know, I'm looking right at it, yeah. No, I'm not, it's the General Government Committee, that's what committee that is. And,
That committee doesn't exist anymore, right?
correct,
Okay.
yeah. What's that?
It exists,
Well, what it is, I know exactly where that came from. When Rick wrote this, he pulled up the one he used, back in 2012 or something like that, where the committee did exist.
Yeah, can you update this for the next meeting?
Oh, yes, no problem, sir.
Thank you.
That it, Tony?
That's it.
Thank you. Takes us to item 11, other items. I see none. Takes us to, item 12, second opportunity for public comment. Hello, Mr. Bormo.
Public has a comment. I was, impressed with the ideas behind the presentation that we were given. I hope the commissioners will give it very serious consideration. I think it's a very, very good project for the county. I wanted to talk a little bit about Earl's consideration about space and how we could utilize some of our buildings. And my concern, as always, is with the expense that goes before taxpayers. And you just approved a bond for the sheriff to have a $10 million new office space over there. And I think that is a complete waste of the taxpayers' money. You have this room, which is not normally used when the commissioners, this could be a sheriff's office space. You have an accountant taking up half the space of a floor somewhere. You have plenty of space to put the sheriff somewhere without building him a $10 million office.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comment?
You can move the drain commission. I didn't say that.
Any other public comment? Last chance for public comment. Public comment is now closed. Takes us to item number 13A, in accordance with MCL. Motion to go into closed session will be per MCL 15.268 to discuss with the county attorney, County of Jackson versus Township of Leone, case number 15-2798-CK in Jackson County Circuit Court.
So moved. Support.
Moved by Snell, supported by Bear. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, passes unanimously.
Go down to 6, or
Go to 6.
Yeah. The other's probably more fun.
I've got to come back up here, though.
I did have a 12 lunch appointment with Concord Township. I moved it to 12:30.
I had an 11:30 meeting, I moved it to 12. I think I'm gonna.
12:30 is still pretty aggressive.
I think we're all rescheduling.
Hey, Mike.
While sitting here.
Yeah.
With respect to the,